Hey guys! Part 4 of What If Naruto Learned Martial Arts and Became the Night Fist. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 10. So Fener, I have a question. Sure, Valkyrie. Shoot. You agreed to teach me some tricks so I can beat the Furinji bimbo the next time I see her, right? Yeah, that's the gist of it. Well, if that's the case, then why the hell am I fighting Thor and not you? The redhead's words quickly echoed throughout the massive steel-lined, cube-shaped pit she was currently standing in, with the sumo wrestler Thor roughly 10 feet away, an eager look on his face. The Taekwondo fighter's look of fury was currently focused on Fener, who was standing 15 feet above the girl, overlooking her in the pit while being surrounded by a bunch of cheering Ragnarok members. The group was currently situated in a rather large alley near an abandoned building that was being lit by torches attached to the walls. There were thugs of all kinds standing around, staring at the massive cube-shaped pit of death in the center of the alley. Said location was Thor's own private fight club, where gang members, thugs, and other scum of the city could come to fight one another for money. After he had received the phone call from Valkyrie, the Ninth Fist had informed his red-haired comrade to meet him at said location to fulfill his previously made promise to teach the girls some new techniques. Naturally, she believed this meant she and the mysterious fighter would be sparing, only for her to be shocked to find out it was Thor in the pit and not Fener, which led to the shouting going around the alley, actually sounding over the chanting. Fener merely sighed at the girl's anger. Look, Valkyrie, I said I would help train you, and part of that requires you fighting with Thor. What's so hard to understand about that? The Eighth Fist stomped her foot in fury. I thought you were going to teach me how to beat that bimbo Mio, not this lard ass. She then pointed to Thor, who didn't look exactly happy about the crack about his weight. Again, Fener merely shook his head before turning to Thor. Sorry about this, Thor. I know this isn't exactly fun for you. The sumo, however, held an impassive look on his face. Don't worry about it. You helped out Sieg, it's the least I can do, insults aside. The hooded fist then turned to Valkyrie. Listen, Valkyrie, I'll teach you how to fight Neo Furinji, but first we need to work on your other problems. This remark merited a look of confusion on the girl's face. What problems? The capoeira user quickly held up 2 fingers. From what I've seen, you have 2 major problems with your fighting style. Number 1 is that when faced with opponents with superior agility and flexibility, like Neo, your movements become rigid and slow, leaving you open to attacks. Number 2, when faced with a much larger opponent like Thor, here your kicks become ineffective. The fist then lowered his hand before pointing at Valkyrie. In order for me to train you, we need to work on solving both of these problems, the first being your difficulty in taking down larger opponents. Once we resolve that, I'll work with you personally. Though there was much logic and forethought in his words, Valkyrie still didn't seem convinced. I get what you're saying, but why can't I train with you first and then fight Thor? It seems like it would be a lot easier for me that way. The Ninth Fist, however, shook his head. Sorry, Kazara, but from the way I see things, it's like this. In order for you to properly learn what I intend to show you, you first need to learn how to deal with opponents like Thor. As for why, well, you'll have to figure that out on your own. He then turned to Thor, who looked ready to go. Alright, you two, remember, this is a sparring match, so don't try to kill each other, but don't hold back too much either, especially you, Thor. If you hold back too much, she won't learn anything. Seeing she wasn't going to get anything more from the hooded fighter, she merely got into her stance and looked directly at Thor. Alright, fine. If taking down this bloated bozo is all I have to do, then I'll show you. Just watch and learn, Fener. Though she seemed confident, Kazara was pretty uneasy. Truth to be told, Fener was dead on in his assumption that she was weak against larger opponents. Every time she fought someone larger than her, it usually resulted in either her running away or someone saving her. Of course, that didn't mean she would give up. Not this time, no way in hell. With the sound of the bell, Kazara quickly leapt towards Thor, who was making his way towards her with surprising speed given his size. The redhead's eyes widened as the massive fighter unleashed a powerful palm thrust with his left hand. She quickly spun to avoid it before unleashing a powerful sidekick. The girl smirked as the kick made contact. Said grin dropped quickly when she saw Thor visibly unaffected by the kick. Nice try, Valkyrie, but you're no match for a sumo. The giant fighter quickly unleashed another palm thrust, causing the distressed fighter to quickly jump back to avoid it. Thor merely continued on. You can't dodge me forever. This quickly proved to be true as Valkyrie soon found herself against a wall. Crap. Gotcha. Her eyes widened as she saw Thor towering over her, his shadow blocking out the light. He geared up for another palm thrust and prepared to attack. Seeing no other option, Valkyrie quickly unleashed a powerful high front kick to Thor's face. At first it seemed to stop him, causing Valkyrie to smile. However, Thor's massive hand quickly wrapped itself around Valkyrie's outstretched leg. What do you think now, Valkyrie? Still think I'm a lard ass? With tremendous force, the sumo quickly swung the girl by her leg before letting go of it, causing her to collide hard against the iron wall. Several of those present cringed at the sound, while Fener merely looked down with a stony look on his face. Thor looked at the downed fighter with a cold gaze. Is this really all you have, Valkyrie? All that tough talk and this is all you have? Maybe if you didn't boost and brag so much you wouldn't be face down in the dirt right now. Valkyrie could barely hear him, her ears ringing from the impact, her whole body still somewhat sore as she tried to get up. It took a little effort, but she quickly got to her feet again and resumed her stance. The crowd cheered at the girl's defiance while Thor looked on with a satisfied face. So you still have some fight in you. Good, guess you're not all talk after all. Unfortunately, Valkyrie was currently at her wit's end and thinking of a solution. What the hell am I gonna do? None of my kicks are working and I don't have a lot of room to move around in here. If I don't find a way to make my kick stronger, this fight isn't going to last much longer. Unfortunately, the redhead couldn't think much further, as she quickly had to roll away, Thor's palm strike barely missing her. You really should keep your eyes open, Valkyrie, otherwise you're just asking me to come in and attack you. Thor turned and quickly made his way towards Valkyrie, who once again found herself narrowly dodging the giant sumo's attacks. Eventually she found herself against the wall once more, with Thor looking over her with a grin on his face that promised pain and caused Valkyrie to actually sweat. Guess this is it. Sorry about this, but hopefully you'll forgive me. Thor quickly brought both his hands together of his head and balled them together before bringing them down hard. Thor's hammer! Valkyrie could only watch as the massive interlocked fists came towards her. She seemed unable to think of what to do. From up in the pit, Fener watched the battle closely, his focus on the currently panicking girl. Come on, Kazara, use your head. The solution's right there in front of you. The normally hot-headed girl didn't know what to do, as she was for the most part blocked by the massive sumo's frame and about to be struck. On reflex, she closed her eyes and almost immediately placed her foot back against the wall. Without even thinking, she quickly pushed her foot forward, sending her rocketing away from Thor right between his legs before getting behind him. Thor's attack stopped midway as he suddenly found his target gone and feeling a quick wind pass under him. Fener, on the other hand, smirked behind his face mask. Looks like she finally figured it out, not intentionally, but still, it's a step in the right direction. Valkyrie, however, was still shocked that she had managed to get away, slowly getting to her feet again. I actually got away, but all I did was push myself off the walls and… Wait, that's it. Thor fully turned himself around to face his fellow fist, only to look in surprise as the once cowering girl now had a confident smirk on her face. What are you smiling about? Finally decided to stop running and face me? Valkyrie didn't say anything at first, only for her smirk to grow wider. You could say that. Let's just say I won't need to be running anymore. Thor smiled at the message, glad that his opponent wouldn't be running anymore, and prepared to attack. That's good to hear. Even if you can't hurt me, that doesn't mean we can't still have a decent match. The sumo quickly took his ready stance as Valkyrie crouched slightly, ready to move and never losing her smirk. Thor's eyes quickly lit up with excitement. All right, let's go. He quickly charged her, only to face fault when she quickly turned around and ran in the opposite direction. What the hell? I thought you said you weren't gonna run anymore? Valkyrie quickly made her way to the iron wall before turning to the angry sumo, the smirk still on her face. Whoever said I was running away? Thor merely looked confused at the statement, as did many of those present. The only one not sharing the confusion was the only other fist present. Without missing a beat, Valkyrie quickly leapt a few feet in the air before reeling both legs back on the wall and rocketing forward with incredible speed. Thor barely managed to duck out the way. She's so fast, what the UGH? He couldn't complete his sentence, as he was nailed with an airborne roundhouse kick to the face that actually managed to send him flying a few feet before landing hard on his back. Valkyrie, on the other hand, landed gracefully on her feet, whilst looking at her downed opponent with a satisfied look. If not for her desire to protect her tough girl image, she would be jumping up and down in joy with a happy look on her face at finally knocking the massive fighter down. But the celebration was cut short as Thor managed to get up again. That was impressive, you actually managed to hurt me with that last kick. What happened? Fener chose to be the voice of explanation, getting everyone's attention. She used her legs to propel herself off the walls and then used the increased momentum to strengthen her kicks. After you avoided her first attack, she quickly rebounded off the wall behind you, taking advantage of the small space you're fighting in. Valkyrie's smile proved that Fener was dead on, while Thor looked at Fener with interest. So that's why you had us fight in here? So she'd learn how to use that trick? Fener nodded. Exactly. Valkyrie's main problem in regards to fighting larger opponents was that their added muscle and girth drastically lessened the strength of her kicks to the point of rendering them ineffective. While she could make her kicks stronger with training, it would take a significant amount of time for it to yield good results. So for now, Valkyrie can utilize this little trick to help add momentum to her kicks by using the environment to her advantage. It may not be a perfect solution, but for now it's decent enough. Thor nodded in understanding, still rubbing his bruised face before turning to Valkyrie, who was still looking eager to fight. Well, now that I know you can put up a better fight, let's get going. Only to once again face fault when he quickly found Fener now in front of him. Angrily, the sumo jumped to his feet and angrily screaming at him. What the hell, Fener? Why do you keep getting in the way? Fener simply turned to him with an apologetic look on his face, rubbing the back of his head. Sorry about this, Thor, but the main idea here is help Valkyrie learn some new techniques first. I'm glad you're so eager to fight, but we can't lose sight of our original intention. Thor didn't seem too satisfied at the answer, only to notice Valkyrie trying to get his attention. Don't worry about it, Thor. If you want, we can have another fight later. Only then it'll be more serious. Most of the present thugs were staring at the normally cold and distant Valkyrie. She almost never acted this nice to anyone, especially to one of the other fists. Truth was, all the lower-ranked members knew that despite being part of the same team, most of the fists weren't exactly close, and Valkyrie was no different. To see her being so chummy with Thor was pretty surprising. Thor himself was pretty shocked, but slowly broke out into a large grin. Sure, that sounds good, I'll look forward to it. With that, the sumo slowly managed to pull himself out of the ring, leaving Fener and Valkyrie inside. Seeing his comrade vacate the ring, Fener slowly turned to Valkyrie, who looked eager to start. Alright, Valkyrie, now that you've managed to figure out the first part of the training, it's time we get serious and work on what we came here to do. Fener then snapped his fingers, causing Valkyrie to look up and notice most of the thugs had gathered closely to the edge of the ring. What surprised her more, though, was that 5 of the members had instruments in their hands. 2 of them had tambourines, 2 more had some kind of large drums. However, what she found most strange was some kind of instrument that looked almost like a bow used by archers, except it had a small gourd tied to the bottom. Seeing her obviously curious expression, Fener decided to enlighten her. If you're wondering what's going on, it's quite simple. Those drums are known as ngoma drums, and that strange bow-like item is called a berimbau. In my fighting style of capoeira, practitioners use those instruments to play music in what's known as a roda, or circle, which is how capoeira fighters spar. I felt it would help set the mood, so I taught a few of the guys how to play the instruments. Fener then took his jacket off, though revealing he had a bandana covering his hair, leaving only his eyes still revealed. Kizara slightly scowled at not being able to see the mysterious warrior's face. Fener started to loosen himself out, however, as he talked. Anyway, I figured it would make things more interesting having them here to play the music. After all, the music's meant to make this more fun. He seemed to smirk behind his mask at that remark. Valkyrie, though, seemed a little unsure about the whole plan. So basically, we're just gonna fight each other, and I'm supposed to figure out how to match your style and hope I don't get my ass handed to me? Don't you have any other training methods? Can't you use some of the methods this master you keep mentioning used? At that instant, Fener froze and a chill went down his spine as he recalled the times of his training. When he turned back to Valkyrie, he had a frightened and somewhat uneasy look on what could be seen of his face. Valkyrie, let me tell you, that's the last thing you ever want. Just thinking back to what I went through makes me feel uneasy. Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful to my master and what his training's done for me, but even so it was still hell. That got the girl's attention. She wasn't used to seeing the normally calm and cool-headed Fener on edge like that. Unable to contain her interest, she posed the question. So, what kind of training did your master put you through? His eyes suddenly glassed over as he recalled probably one of the most insane of his master's training methods. It happened 3 months ago, in the middle of the ocean. Flashback, 3 months ago in middle of the ocean. It had been almost 2 months since Naruto had begun his training with Soul, and it had been easily the hardest training in his life. Without his chakra, he quickly found his skills were seriously lacking, so the first 2 months Soul spent on building Naruto's strength and speed as well as making him flexible enough to properly use capoeira. However, today Soul told him the training would start to be different and Naruto should prepare himself. Now on the massive ship, Naruto was standing at the front of the ship, ready and waiting. I wonder what Soul-sensei has planned? He said to be prepared for something different, though I wonder what he meant. Hey, mind if I intrude on your train of thought? Naruto quickly stopped his thoughts to see the smiling face of his new capoeira master. Of course, Naruto returned the smile given all that Soul had done for him so far, but also because he was eager to see what was going to happen. Not interested in wasting any time, Soul pretty much got straight to the point. Alright Naruto, now that we've managed to get most of your conditioning training out of the way, it's time we start working on your more serious training. First we'll work on your reaction time and movements. Naruto seemed slightly confused at his words, though it didn't take long for Soul to elaborate. One of the most basic aspects of capoeira is to never stop moving and also being ready to dodge or attack your enemy regardless of what stance or position you're in. Now then, first off Naruto, I'm going to have to ask you to remove your shirt and shoes if you please. Now that request seemed a little odd, giving Naruto a faint sense of déjà vu as he recalled his early training with Jiraiya. Then again, seeing how both had turned out rather well and Soul had yet to steer him wrong, he complied. It was fair to say that Soul's training had done some serious work with Naruto's physicality. Originally he didn't have much muscle, since most ninjas were built for speed and relied on chakra to handle the strength. Now, however, he was well built with well-defined and sculpted muscles, though like his masters weren't big and bulky to restrict his movement. Once it was done, Soul nodded before pointing to the bowsprit of the ship. Good, now I want you to stand and balance yourself on the bowsprit. Of course, Naruto turned to his master, looking a little uneasy and questioning the somewhat absurd task. Soul merely looked at him. Don't give me that look, it's meant to help you improve your balance, agility, and reaction time. It would be too easy and boring if you did it on the floor. Now go on. Naruto, hesitant at first, eventually and with some effort managed to balance himself on the stick attached to the bow of the boat. Unfortunately, he had his back to his master, which proved to be a mistake. Good work Naruto, now for the last part. At this point Naruto heard what sounded like his master lifting up some metal object, which produced a strange sloshing noise. Soul-sensei, what exactly are you? Splosh. Naruto quickly found himself gagging, coughing and holding back vomit as the smell, feel and taste of dead fish overwhelmed his senses and covered his whole body. Soul was standing not too far away with a now empty bucket that was once filled with the chum he was now drenched in, a satisfied look on the master's face. With a grin he put the bucket down. Good, now we're all set to begin. He spoke only to duck out of the way to avoid a fish head that was thrown by his now slime-covered and pissed-off disciple. What the hell is the idea of covering me in F# carrot kingfish guts? This stuff smells like puked up shit. Naruto's temper had come under some control over his time on the ship, but who wouldn't go ballistic if they were covered from head to toe in chum? Soul simply developed a playful look on his face. Now Naruto, I can assure you that there is a method to my madness. His eyes drifted to the ocean before gaining a smirk. And wouldn't you know it, my method/madness has arrived. I would recommend you get ready to move. Naruto's fury was replaced with confusion as he noticed his master's eyes focusing on the water. He quickly noticed the water moving as well as a large gray object on the surface of the water moving towards him. He couldn't make it out at first, but after he got close enough his eyes widened considerably. #KME. Those were the only words he could make out before a massive 20-foot-long great white shark leapt out of the water, its jaws opened, ready to chew through the blonde's now chum-covered body. Soul merely watched as the massive demon of the sea closed in on his disciple, tightly clenching his hands over his arms. Come on, Naruto, don't just stand there, you know what to do. Naruto quickly knocked himself out of his stupor enough to jump above the massive beast while flipping backwards to avoid its dorsal fin. As he flipped over and his head turned back, he watched as his eyes were just a few inches from the high blade-like appendage of the beast. The creature quickly dove back into the ocean as Naruto made his descent back to the bowsprit. Moving quickly, he managed to position his feet to land on the wood, only to panic when they started to slip as they contacted. The distraught blonde flung out his arms for balance and clamped down hard with his toes to keep himself from falling off. However, he found this to be extremely hard given the slippery chum-covered surface of the bowsprit. Sadly, he didn't have much time to regain his footing or balance as another shark of roughly the same size jumped out of the water on his left side and was headed straight towards him. Naruto could only look at the beast's massive maw with a dry look on his face. $KME sideways. Soul, on the other hand, continued to watch as his disciple frantically leapt and danced on the chum-soaked pole, trying his hardest to stay on the surface but finding it to be progressively difficult. Sorry, Naruto, but you'll have to learn this soon enough. Due to the chum, the pole is too slippery to stand on, and because it's so narrow you don't have much room to land on. The only way to avoid the sharks is to keep moving and planning your next moves out before you make contact with the pole. At first it may seem difficult, but under these extreme conditions you'll learn how to do it out of reflex pretty soon. It may seem a little cruel, but to become a true master of capoeira you just have to be a little extreme sometimes. Although, he'd have to be lying if he said he wasn't enjoying the survival show. Naruto panted slightly as he continued to leap and move rather clumsy while trying to avoid falling into the shark-filled ocean, only to find it becoming more difficult with more and more sharks somehow appearing out of nowhere. What the hell is with all these damn sharks? His eyes turned to Soul, now happily seated and eating an apple while watching his disciple. I think I forgot to mention that this particular location is a popular spot for great white sharks. They often come here during mating season, which just happens to be right now. He gained a somewhat innocent look on his face that made Naruto want to kick him. Did I really forget to mention that? Naruto quickly grabbed the pole with one hand and held tight, trying to keep the rest of his body up. Sweat mixed with fish chum was sliding down his face as he breathed in and out, only for his eyes to widen at the familiar sound of a shark erupting from the ocean as it headed towards him. Naturally, Naruto pushed himself up to avoid it, only to discover another shark had leapt out just seconds later and was right on top of him. The blonde stared into the black abyss that was the creature's mouth, his eyes focused on the pale white teeth that promised to rip him to shreds. At that moment he could actually feel his heart beating as the world slowed down around him. The creature slowly drifted closer and closer while the ex-ninja remained in the air, watching as if it were a movie. As it inched closer he could feel his heartbeat grow louder and louder till it was pounding like a massive drum. At that moment a strange but familiar beat filled the air. Just as the beast was a few feet from his face, Naruto's body moved on its own to the music's command. Smash! His and the shark's eyes widened considerably as his left leg shot up high, his foot smashing into the beast's bottom jaw with immense force. Naruto cringed slightly at the feel of the shark's rough skin as his leg contacted with its jaw. The shark itself slowly curved up and backwards before doing a back flop hard onto the sea. Naruto merely watched the shark fall before turning his attention to his slowly descending body, all the while following the sound and beat of the music. His eyes quickly took note as two more shark fins closed in of the bowsprit. Without thinking, the blonde's body slowly began to once again move on its own, and yet Naruto knew exactly what was going to happen. He slowly leaned forward, extending both arms and watching as the two titans-like beasts rose from the ocean, both determined to chew him up. However, once Naruto reached the pole, he gripped it as tightly as possible before rotating his hips while doing a full split with his legs. Quickly releasing his right hand, he spun it along with his hips before grabbing the pole again. His extended legs both spun with great speed and force, each striking one of the sharks hard on the side of their faces, redirecting the pair back into the sea. Naruto quickly found his grip slipping while noticing another shark ready to attack. He prepared to move, once again hearing the familiar beat being playing. With a smirk, he pushed himself up before spinning his body and flipping forward, quickly braining his leg directly into the beast's face. All the while he listened to both the beat of his heart and the beat of the music, as if the pair moved in perfect sync. Soul watched the spectacle with a massive grin on his face, all the while playing his own berimbau, shifting himself slightly to his own musical beat. He continued to watch as Naruto danced and dueled with the sharks. Not bad, Naruto. With a little practice, you'll be able to do this without the music or anything pretty soon. Still, your movements are still pretty rigid and your timing needs some work. Still, good work. Naturally, Soul also took note that his disciple, despite his display, was getting slower with a great deals of sweat dripping down his body and an exerted look on his face. Soul merely shook his head with a sigh. Still, even with the training, he still needs a lot of work. Can't expect him to become a pro overnight. Naruto, on the other hand, was by now struggling to keep moving. The music had helped to get him into motion, but even that couldn't help his growing fatigue. True, he still had a pretty amazing stamina, but the constant moving, striking and dodging he was doing was extremely taxing, and the blonde could feel himself slowly ending up on his last leg. Having managed to kick another shark away, he positioned his feet to make contact with the pole, preparing for another airborne move, only for him to slip off and his eyes to widen. He quickly tried to grab the bowsprit only to notice 4 sharks all jump out at once on him. This time around, Naruto didn't have anything to support him, nor enough strength to move. He watched as they closed in, only to notice the music had stopped. Well, I think that's enough for now. The blonde watched with great shock as his master rocketed off the deck of the ship before flipping forward, spreading his legs wide and rotating his body with such speed that he seemed to create a small cyclone. His legs crashed into the massive beasts with such force they not only left an actual dent into the beasts' bodies, but Naruto could actually see countless teeth fly out like bullets. Each creature flew far through the air, easily a couple hundred yards before they were nothing but small dots in the distance. Naruto, however, too distracted by his master's display, noticed he was no longer falling and instead once again on the deck of the ship. Soul towered over him with a cheeky grin on his face. The blonde, who was covered in sweat, chum, and had just survived countless shark attacks, was speechless. Soul simply continued to smile at him before speaking. Nice work, Naruto. I hope you're ready to go again soon, cause we aren't gonna stop till you send those sharks flying too. At that point, either from exhaustion, shock, or the foul smell of fish mixed with sweat and sea water, the blonde promptly passed out. Soul simply looked at him with a smile still present on his face. Ah well, we'll pick this up later. I'll let you sleep it off for a bit. Flashback end. I still get nightmares about those experiences. He made me go through that same psychotic routine for 7 hours straight every day for 3 weeks before I finally got it down. Took me forever to get the smell of fish out of my clothes. Fener went on about his master's training method, not noticing the outright bewildered looks on all those present, none more so than Valkyrie, whose eyes looked about ready to fly out of her head. Finally noting the silence, the ninth fist turned his head to the still shell-shocked Taekwondo practitioner. Everything okay? Valkyrie didn't move at first before slowly coming out of her obvious pause. Your master made you fight great white sharks for 3 weeks while balancing yourself on a pole? Her tone made it clear she simply couldn't comprehend anyone doing something so, well, crazy. Fener merely nodded, still feeling somewhat nostalgic recalling his training time with his master. Yep, Soul-sensei is a bit eccentric. Though I can't really argue with the results. You can see why I can't really use the same method to teach you. His face suddenly gained an eerie dark look. Unless, of course, you want to give it a try. I'm pretty sure I could arrange it, somehow. Valkyrie suddenly paled as she envisioned herself desperately clinging to a pole while sharks tried to take a bite out of her, not to mention being coated in fish guts. Her pride taking a back seat, she humorously shook her head violently from side to side. No, no way, no thanks, this is good. At that point, Fenris simply chuckled at her reaction. Kind of figured you'd see things my way. His face then slowly shifted to its serious look. Now then, let's begin. He snapped his fingers, getting the attention of the members holding the instruments above. Okay guys, like we rehearsed, zoom zoom zoom. Let's go. The one holding the berimbau nodded as the others got into position. He took a deep breath before slowly strumming the string, creating a slow rhythmic beat. As he began, soon the ones on the nagoma drums and the tambourines began to play. Pretty soon the group was playing in sequence, creating a very odd but rather beautiful rhythm that slowly caused the others to start clapping in sequence to the music. Then finally, the leader began to sing at what appeared to be Portuguese, and like before, the others around him started to sing as well, all the while still clapping. Insert zoom 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 actual capoeira music. Here's a link. Watch. V equals WXG Zusi 5 VK8. Valkyrie watched all this transpire, a little uncomfortable at first, yet as it went on she actually found the beat to be both soothing and strangely energizing. She actually felt the need to start dancing to the music herself. It's nice, isn't it? Valkyrie was taken from her thought to find Fener already in his jinga, moving in a loosened stance all the while taking in the music around him. Have to say, I was a little confused about the music at first, but after some time I just couldn't help but love listening to it. It just has the kind of beat that makes you want to dance, doesn't it? The redhead smirked at him. Funny, never took you for much of a dancer. Fener returned with a smile of his own. I'm a man of many talents, though it helps that capoeira takes elements of both martial arts and dancing together. You pretty much have to know how to dance to use it properly, not like I'm complaining. He adopted a more serious but somewhat excited look. Now then, let's see how you handle yourself with my techniques. Valkyrie of course got excited as well, the music only adding to her anxiousness. Bring it on, pal. At the sound of the next drum beat, Valkyrie kicked herself on the wall before rocketing towards Fenrir, determined to lay him out. Too bad you had to go and teach me how to make my kicks stronger. Now I'm gonna have to lay you out in front of your little band. She unleashed a powerful flying front kick, determined to hit him straight on. As she drew closer, Fenrir still remained in jinga, never losing his smirk. You should know, Valkyrie, that without proper control and mobility, just before her foot made contact he leaned back far enough that she flew right over him. He quickly placed his hands on the ground before lifting his right leg up fast and slamming it into Valkyrie's back, who due to her position couldn't evade it. As she hit the ground, Fenrir flipped to his feet before resuming his jinga. His eyes still focused on her before finishing his statement. All that extra powers becomes your greatest weakness. The eighth fist was battered but not beaten as she quickly leapt back to her feet. Her attention now focused on the still moving Fener, she slowly moved herself into her fighting stance. Fine, if that won't work, guess I'll just have to kick your ass the old-fashioned way. Without hesitation she charged forward towards the dancing warrior, determined to lay him out. Fenrir merely shook his head. Oh, if only it were that easy. The red-headed girl was quick to attack, striking with a side kick which Fenrir managed to dodge easily by once again bending backwards, all the while maintaining his momentum. However, Kizara quickly took advantage of his position, raising her still extended leg up high before bringing it down hard. Axe kick! Fenrir, however, proved too fast as he quickly leapt backwards, landing on one hand before quickly rotating his whole body to the left and extending his left leg straight out. Valkyrie couldn't react fast enough as Fener quickly swept her unguarded leg, causing her to fall backwards. Unfortunately, she never met the ground as Fener's hand rotated some more to the right before flipping his body and then planting his right foot hard on the ground, kicking upwards with his left leg and using his left hand for balance. The kick struck the airborne girl hard in the back, many of those present cringing at the sound as they watched her body bend back as her spine was pushed forward. It was even worse for Valkyrie. Saliva and blood flew out of her mouth, along with most of the air in her body. Thankfully Fenrir didn't put too much power into the kick as she quickly flew off his foot into the air. That said, she still landed flat on her back, meriting another cringe from all those present. As she slowly flipped herself over, trying to get up while coughing hard, Fenrir actually looked at her with an impressed face. That was surprising. I was worried there for a second. I take it this has happened before? Most of those present looked at Fenrir with confusing looks on their faces, not sure what he was talking about. Thor, however, seemed to understand. It happened before she hit the ground. Normally, after taking a hit like that and then colliding with the ground, most people would be unconscious or dead. Valkyrie, however, managed to raise her head up enough so it didn't collide straight with the ground and positioned her feet flat so it would absorb some of the impact. Doing so lessened the damage and kept her in this fight, if only barely. Valkyrie, who still found it somewhat hard to breathe, tried to push herself to her feet while Fenrir stood by. It's a good thing you did that, otherwise I'm not quite sure what would have happened to you. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not aiming to kill you, but I figured if I didn't take this seriously you'd be pissed off. He waited for a response, which he got after Valkyrie finally got to her feet again, though her legs were still shaky. Her face, however, held confidence. You're damn right I'd be pissed off. I'm not looking for a handicap here. I don't care how many times you have to knock me flat on my ass, I'm not stopping. Fenrir smirked at her defiance before thinking back to his earlier statement. So I take it something like that happened to you before? Valkyrie seemed confused at his implication. Before you hit the ground, you instinctively raised your head and positioned your feet to lessen the impact and damage. Most people don't react that way unless they've experienced it at some point in the past. It didn't surprise Fenrir that Valkyrie's face quickly hardened at his implication. Didn't take much for him to figure it out. It happened with Mjolnir, didn't it? He expected Valkyrie to fly off the handle into a rage, but oddly enough her face actually adopted a sort of sad look, like she was at some kind of impasse. Yeah, it happened when I first fought that bitch. I went in all confident that I could beat her, but nothing I did worked, she just danced around me without any trouble. I got so pissed off I tried to kick her and left myself open, would have cracked my skull on the pavement if she hadn't saved me. At that point the frustrated fist clutched her hands hard in anger. First her and now you, the same thing happened, and the only thing that's different is that I now know how to make it so my fall doesn't hurt as much. What the hell do I have to do to keep up with people like you and her? Well, you could try being a little more mobile for one. Valkyrie looked at Fenrir completely in the dark about his words. Huh? The capoeira fighter pinched his nose at the girl's response before signaling the band to stop. He then made his way over to the girl. Look, Kizara, the reason Mio and myself were able to knock you down so easy is because your fighting style is so rigid. The Taekwondo fighter's face took on an offended look. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Something wrong with the way I fight? No, that's not the problem. Listen, Taekwondo is a very effective fighting style, no doubt about that. However, think of it this way, my fighting style of capoeira is similar to yours as we both mainly use kicks. Yet despite that, the difference is that your style focuses on strong kicks, typically from stationary stances. My style, on the other hand, relies on more rhythmic movements in conjunction with kicks. This done to allow greater mobility, and also allows me to alter my stance or body position more freely. He then stood in front of Valkyrie. Alright Valkyrie, I'd like you to perform a simply front-side kick if you please. The ninth fist quickly found the girl's boot in his face, feeling slight pain from the strike. Those present chuckled at his pain, while Valkyrie held a playful smirk on her face. Not exactly what I was going for, but whatever. He proceeded to move out of the way of her boot-clad foot and then moved to her side. Valkyrie seemed a bit uneasy at his actions. You'd better not try anything weird, pal, or the next kick's gonna hurt a lot more. I'll keep that in mind. Anyway, let's look at your stance. Right now you have your left leg extended with your right leg placed flat on the floor. A good stance for a typical kick, that if it manages to connect would do a decent amount of damage. However, therein lies the problem. See, in this position, if the kick misses your left wide open, and without even hesitating he quickly swept her leg, causing her to fall on her butt hard. I'm able to do that to you. The ninth fist quickly leapt back to avoid a hard punch from the downed girl, who was now rubbing her sore rear. You didn't have to knock me flat on my ass, you know. She dusted herself off and got back to her feet. Okay, so basically if I just stand in place like a statue, it's the same as putting a sign on my face that says knock me down. I won't fight back? Not exactly in those words, but yeah, that's the general idea. Truthfully, all you need to do is learn to be lighter on your feet, so to speak. Valkyrie seemed somewhat confused by the concept, and pondered it for a few moments before gearing herself up to continue. Alright, I think I get what you're saying. Let's keep going. Fener smiled behind his mask. Well, she's definitely got a lot of drive and passion. Now if only I could fix her personality, though maybe that's asking for too much. With a snap of his fingers the band resumed their music as Fener got back into his stance. Alright Valkyrie, let's resume where we left off. I won't pull any punches, so get ready. The eighth fist actually smiled a bit in response. No problem. All those around them clapped and cheered in conjunction to the music while Thor watched, generally enjoying himself along with the others. Have to say, Siege was right about Fener. He's not just a great fighter but also a good teacher and a pretty decent person all around. Actually makes being in Ragnarok a lot more fun, especially with that music of his. The sumo paused for a moment, turning his attention to the one playing the barium ball. I wonder if he could teach me to play that thing too. Scene change, Ryozampiku, later in the afternoon. Are you sure you should be up, Mio? I mean, you're still pretty injured. Don't worry about it, Kenichi, it's just a scratch. Besides, this place would fall apart without me. Kenichi, currently taking a break from his more rigorous training session, had dropped his more dedicated attitude for one of worry as he attempted to persuade his potential love interest to go back to resting and was failing miserably at it. Come on, Mio, I'm glad you finally woke up and all, but I really don't think you should be moving around so quickly. Much to the relief of everyone at the dojo, Mio had finally woken up from her excursion with Fener. Thankfully, with the help of Kensei and Akisame, most of her injuries had been for the most part lessened. Kenichi was as expected especially happy that she was finally up, but he was also still uneasy. His eyes focused on the bandages currently wrapped around her abdomen that were covering the burn from Fener's kick, visible near the bottom of the t-shirt she was wearing. Mio of course wasn't discouraged and was moving around relatively well, but she could see Kenichi's uncomfortable look at her abdomen. With a sincere smile on her face she tried to ease his troubles. Don't worry, Kenichi, I'm fine. I appreciate that you're worrying about me, but it's nothing to get so excited about. The blonde slowly turned, only to cringe and clutch her abdomen. Kenichi was quickly at her side. See, you're in no shape to be moving around. You should be resting. The cat-loving blonde tried to argue, only to be overturned by a second opinion. He's right, Mio. Both pairs of eyes turned to find Akisame standing in the doorway, somehow having snuck up on them. You shouldn't be moving around so much. True, we took care of most of your injuries, but that burn on your stomach still needs time to properly heal, and moving around too much could aggravate it. Appa, Akisame and Kenichi are right, Mio. You should take better care of yourself if you want to get better, Appa. Appa-chai added his own 2 cents, currently in the middle of getting his butt handed to him at Othello by Kenichi's little sister Anoka, who came back not too long ago. Despite her somewhat childlike disdain for Mio, she could of course see that she was in bad shape. They're right, Blondie, you should just listen to them and go back to bed, that way you'll stay away from my brother. The last part she whispered to herself. Mio's eyes darted back and forth between those around her, and eventually she sighed, seeing that she couldn't win. Alright, fine, but you guys better not tear up or burn down the house. Her response merited smiles from the others, as she slowly made her way back to her room. Kenichi slowly took his eyes off his friend's retreating form before turning his attention to his sister, who had just defeated the death god of the Muay Thai underworld for the 10th time in the last 2 hours. His face became serious. Okay, now that we've dealt with that, I'd like to know where you've been all this time. I was worried about you when I found out from Mom that you didn't go straight home. Anoka simply turned to her brother and stuck out her tongue at him. You said you didn't want to hang out with me, so I left and met these really cool guys who were really nice to me. Kenichi, of course, didn't take that message very well. What do you mean? Are you telling me you hung out with total strangers? The little girl, however, didn't seem to see the actual harm in her words as she kept speaking. Yeah, well, first they saved me from these thugs, but I scrapped my knee, so they brought me to their house where they fixed it up. That response only served to cause her brother to freak out even more at the prospect. Unfortunately, she quickly zoned out her brother's growing breakdown as she continued to relay the events. Yeah, they were really nice. Well, actually, one of them was nice, and the other guy was kind of mean. Still, they were really cool, but the nice one had to leave pretty quickly, which left me with the mean one. Though I cooked for him and even made him laugh, he wasn't so bad at all, really. Kenichi, however, couldn't hear his sister's words as the only thoughts running through his mind were, little sister stayed with strangers, with them for hours. Anoka, however, stopped her musings for a moment before thinking about something. I wonder where that nice guy ended up. Scene change, streets roughly same time. Crap. Man, I'm gonna be late. Naruto looked at his watch while running as fast as his legs could carry him, at least without looking totally out of place. Of course, he was still running at a pace that would make most marathon runners pass out after about 6 minutes. It had taken some time, but he'd managed to work things out with Valkyrie, who was pretty grateful for the help. He would have stayed longer, but he had remembered that he had another prior engagement. Namely his shift at Gekurin. Oh man, if I'm late again, Renka will chew my ass out until I turn 60. He was barely able to get back to the house, change out of his Fener clothes and run as fast as he could to the district while avoiding his obviously angry roommate. As he continued to sprint, his eyes focused on the entrance to the Gekurin just a few blocks away. Too close to call, better gun it. Truthfully, he was only running at about half of his true speed, so he wouldn't reveal his true skills to those around him. In this case, however, it was totally worth the risk. Like a rocket, he took off, leaving a trail of dust in his wake. All those around him felt a gust of wind rush by them, only seeing a faint yellow blur. Naruto quickly closed the gap to the Gekurin till he was just a block away. Almost there. Just as he was about to reach the door, they suddenly shot open, smacking him square in the face and sending him flying backwards into a small stand. All eyes turned to the destruction with looks of awe, confusion, and shock. Naruto slowly rubbed his head before muttering out an ow, only to look up as a shadow was over him. Hesitating a little, he slowly raised his blue eyes, only to feel a cold chill go down his spine. You're late again, Naruto. The chill increased as his eyes met the icy stare of his beautiful though currently angry coworker/friend Renkama. Thinking of nothing else to help break the ice, he simply muttered out, "Hey Renka, what's up?" The blue-haired girl didn't say anything at first. Her eyes shadowed, but Naruto could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Slowly he could see a dark aura rise around her as she started to crack her knuckles. Truth was, he could fight her and probably beat her. The problem though was that she was his friend and someone he really cared about, so he couldn't strike her. Good decision in a normal sense, but unfortunately it pretty much meant in situations like this he was pretty much screwed. Thus all he could let out was a slight meep as Renka's eyes seemed to be glowing with fury and frustration at him. "I'll show you what's up." One brutal ass-kicking and violent verbal chewing out later. "Hey Naruto, would you like some ice for your face or for your pride?" Shokatsu snickered as he barely managed to form the words due to his amusement. He looked at his coworker's bruised face and his snickering only grew louder. Naruto managed to glare at him despite his current condition. "Piss off, I'm not in the mood." Sadly, the cook wasn't going to let it go. "My goodness Naruto, such a temper on you. I'm surprised, the way you act around Renka, I almost thought you got off on her kicking your ass." His laughter, however, was silenced at the familiar sound of dishes and food splattering on the ground. His mirth was lost as he glared at Naruto, who had a smirk of his own on his face. "Oops, sorry about that. I think I'm still a little off balance from the ass-kicking I just so love to get off on." Shokatsu slowly made his way over to Naruto, intent on strangling him, only to be held back by Ryu. "Come on man, you kind of had that coming. Now go back to the kitchen before you and Naruto wreck the restaurant further." Seeing no point in arguing with his friend, especially since his solution meant the least amount of wasted food, he returned to the kitchen. All the while this was going on, Renka was busy watching Naruto from the balcony above. However, she had a somewhat sad look on her face as she focused on the bruises on the boy's body. Maybe I went a little overboard. I just wanted to teach him a lesson. Having trouble in the world of love, Renka? The blue-haired girl jumped and clamped her hands over her mouth to avoid screaming as she turned around, only to find Hakubi standing behind her with a smile on his face. Renka quickly tried to compose herself and save face by straightening herself out. What are you talking about, Master Hakubi? I'm not interested in that idiot. After all, why would I beat him up so much if I liked him? Hakubi, however, wasn't fooled as he could see the red on her face before holding up his hand to make her stop. Please, Renka, you can't lie to an old man, especially in the ways of romance. Naturally, Renka became somewhat more withdrawn and shy as she seemed to contemplating her actual feelings for the blonde. Well, I mean, I like Naruto a lot, but I'm not sure about. Hakubi merely chuckled at the girl's reservation before looking to the ceiling. Ah, to be young and have a crush again. You know, looking back, your relationship with Naruto is almost exactly like the one your father and mother had when they were your age. Renka's eyes quickly widened as her blush increased at what the master was insinuating. He continued to think back. In many ways, Naruto is like your father was back when he was this young. Dark, mysterious, and seemingly holding an enormous, secretive weight on his shoulders. The master's face hardened behind his glasses. Your father was a very broken man after his brother was banished from China. I was surprised to see the once vibrant and lively person he used to be reduced to such a hollow shell. At that moment his face softened before looking at Renka and Naruto, picturing Renka's parents in his mind. Then your father met your mother, and it didn't take too long for her to pull him out of his funk. Oh, they argued and fought with each other so often it makes what you two are doing seem like an ideal conversation. Still, despite all their bickering, I'd never seen Kensei as happy and alive back then as when he was with your mother. I believe that if it hadn't been for her, your father might have followed a similar path to Suigetsu. The same can be said of you and Naruto, perhaps. Renka's mind thought about what she had been told while looking at Naruto and feeling her heartbeat increase, causing her to slightly clutch her chest. Hakubi merely smiled before slowly walking towards the stairs. Naruto is a fine young man, but it's obvious that, like your father, he holds a deep wound over his heart that only a special person can help heal, and I haven't seen him more alive and happy than when he is with you. I'm not saying you have to do anything, Renka, only that if your heart tells you to act, you should follow it. But make sure to take it slowly. He then headed down the stairs while Renka was busy thinking about what she'd been told. Maybe Master Hakubi's right. I do care about Naruto, and he makes me feel happier than anyone else. Even though I don't know much about him, and he still keeps secrets from me. After contemplating some more, she came to a decision. Alright, I'll give it a shot, but I'll take it slowly at first. With confidence, the young girl prepared to make her move when a thought stopped her cold. What the hell do I say to him? Achoo. Hey Naruto, you alright? You don't have cold or anything, do you? Nah, I'm fine, Ryu. Huh, then maybe someone special is talking about you. Yeah, sure, knowing my luck it's probably Shokatsu talking about what ways he wants to turn me into tonight's special. Hakubi merely sweat dropped at the boy's words while looking back at Renka, who still seemed somewhat hesitant to approach him and confused on her exact approach. Seems like this could take a little longer than I thought. Scene change, night, Tanimoto Mansion. Sorry, I know you want Naruto and Renka interaction, but that's not the focus of this chapter. Geez, what the heck was up with Renka today? Every time I got near her she got all red in the face and started stuttering all of a sudden. Well, at least she didn't kick me the face like Kizaru did. Man, girls are confusing. The ninth fist said to himself as he made his way into the house, having finished his shift with some rather odd interaction from Renka, who had still been somewhat shaken from her conversation with Hakubi. Though Naruto did feel some connection with the girl, his skills with women were still below par, and it would take more time for him to fully figure them out. However, for now he was focused on just sitting down and contemplating the day's events. Or that's what he would have liked to do if he hadn't gotten a fist to the face courtesy of Natsu. Smash. Was that really necessary? The pretty boy blonde gave him a cold look. That's for leaving me to babysit the brat all day, you bastard. Naruto just walked past him, rubbing his now sore face before planting himself in a seat. Well, excuse me. I just figured some social interaction would do you some good instead of just sitting in here all day. The sixth fist, however, wasn't amused. Don't give me that crap, you did that just to piss me off and it worked. My God, that girl was annoying. She ran around the house like crazy, broke a few very valuable antiques, and to top it off made me eat that pile of orange slop. Naruto actually looked at the normally cold fist in surprise. True, he still had the cold look on his face, but the ex-shinobi could see a hint of life in his eyes. It was faint but still there. You know, for someone who claims to have hated spending time with the girl, you sure seem to remember the events quite well. More importantly, I figured you'd have thrown her to the curb the second I left. Congratulations, you just went up a notch from being a complete asshole to somewhat of a douchebag. Well done. The ninth fist quickly ducked to avoid a plate that had been chucked at him. With a dry look, he turned to the plate. You know you're gonna have to replace that. His roommate let out a frustrated growl, causing the ninth fist to slightly harden his own look. I don't see what your problem is. From what I can tell, you genuinely enjoyed having that girl around, and you can act all stuck up and broody all you want, it doesn't change anything. His response actually caused Hermit to become somewhat angry. Listen, pal, what I do and how I act is none of your business. You don't know anything about me and wouldn't understand anything at. You mean about your late little sister? Those words stopped the sixth fist cold as his eyes widened while his mind flashed to the image of a young girl with long blonde hair and purple eyes, gasping for air from a respirator. Kid, he briefly muttered out with his eyes shadowed over before slowly looking at Naruto with a face so cold it could have frozen the devil himself. How the hell do you even know about that? Naruto's face remained impassive at first, not at all fazed by the boy's harsh glare before letting out a sigh. The picture you freaked out about, the one that girl from earlier looked at. The Kempo user's eyes darted over to the picture frame that he had put face down, only to find it was back up, revealing a much younger and smiling Natsu. Behind him was a tall, well-dressed man with brown hair and a mustache. Next to him was a young, beautiful-looking woman with brown hair done in a ponytail. Finally, next to Natsu was a young girl with hair and eyes similar to Natsu's, holding a doll in her arms with a massive smile on her face. They all looked happy, far different from the person now glaring at Naruto with a look of absolute hatred. You had no right to touch that, you son of a bitch. As always, Naruto wasn't fazed as he continued to speak. Give the tough guy act a rest for a moment, Hermit. I admit it probably wasn't best to invade into your past, but even so, that doesn't mean you have to act like such an asshole all the time. The angry sixth fist clutched his hands as his rage built, while he remained silent. Naruto's face, however, softened as his eyes drifted to the picture frame. When I saw that picture, it didn't take me long to put things together. I figured that since I hadn't seen any of those people in the house, and you never mentioned them, it must have meant they had died in some way. It's also pretty obvious that your sister was your only blood relative, since she actually looks like you. I guess something must have happened to her that made you the way you are now. His face once again hardened as he turned to Natsu, who by now was barely keeping himself from attacking the blonde, who remained steadfast. You may find this hard to believe, but I do understand how painful it can be to lose someone important to you. Even so, you shouldn't stay so chained to the past. You'll only end up holding yourself back and hurting the people around you. He then paused, thinking back to Sasuke. After all, I'm pretty sure your sister wouldn't want you to be like this. That was the last straw. Natsu completely lost his composure and attacked Naruto with a look of absolute fury in his eyes. What the hell could you possibly know about her? He slashed out with a knife hand strike, but Naruto was able to easily block the attack with his right leg. Hermit, however, wasn't dissuaded as he thrusted his other hand straight for the blonde's throat. Using his leg, Naruto quickly pushed himself off the couch, which was pierced by the frustrated fist's knife hand, while the capoeira user landed not far away. Hermit prepared to continue his assault, only to be stopped cold by a hard kick to the face that sent him down to the ground. Naruto stood over him with a very cold look as the fist tried to get up. You can't keep going on like this, Natsu. Nothing awaits you on this path except emptiness and pain. Is that really what you want? Natsu, however, spat in Naruto's face. What the hell does it even matter to you? How could you possibly know what it's like to lose everything you held dear? You know nothing of my pain. At that moment, Hermit actually felt a cold chill run down his spine and an intense weight fall on him. His eyes suddenly looked into the piercing gaze of Naruto, who now stared at him not with the eyes of a human, but almost like the eyes of the fierce beast whose name he shared. Don't you dare talk to me about pain. I know it far more than you do. You should be grateful you had a sister at all. I had no one, no parents, no siblings, nothing. His voice almost sounded warped. It actually made Hermit feel scared of him. Is this really the same guy? He thought as he felt those piercing blue eyes stare at him with the intensity of a diamond drill. However, the pressure quickly disappeared as Naruto slowly moved away from the downed fighter, causing him to look confused at his actions. I hated the world too. I started out with nothing and wanted to see everything burn. Hermit's eyes actually widened as he could tell that the blonde wasn't lying. Naruto's mind flashed back to the horrid years of his childhood and the time he spent in the village. Life was a struggle for me, and there were times when all I felt was hatred. Then I realized that nothing changed from having this hatred inside me. All it did was make me bitterer. I didn't want to feel that way forever. I wanted to be free of that feeling for good. He then looked towards Natsu with a defiant face. I let go of my hatred a long time ago and left it in the past where it belongs. Now I look towards the future and what I hope to make out of it one day. He then headed towards the stairs without saying another word as Hermit slowly got to his feet. Just before he disappeared from sight, Naruto took one last look at Hermit. I can't force you to change the way you see things, and I realize that you've had a lot of pain in your life like I have. Still, you shouldn't let that hatred be all your life is about. I may not have known your sister, but I do know she wanted you to live a happy and fulfilled life, not to stay stuck in the past. It's hard to believe me, I know, but you've just got to let go, Natsu, and move forward. The Sixth Fist didn't know what to say as he actually could see his sister in his mind telling him to be strong. It was that same wish that had driven him to become who he was now, but in pursuit of that strength he'd let his hate and distrust consume him. His eyes were no longer cold but instead held a deep melancholy as he slowly made his way to the picture frame before bringing it close to his face. His eyes focused on his sister's smiling face. Kid, is that what you wanted from me? To be happy? Did I just bury myself in my anger? The young blonde felt a torrent of emotions inside of him as he clutched the picture while a single tear slid down his face on the picture where his sister was. What should I do now, Kid? Time skip next day, Gekurin. I wonder if any of what I said sunk into that thick skull of his. Naruto quietly pondered to himself, thinking about some of what he'd said to Hermit not too long ago. Even though he couldn't exactly say he liked the guy, he did understand the effects of having a painful childhood. Like with Sasuke, he felt somewhat connected to the blonde and did want to help him change. Hopefully he won't try to shove his hand through my lung the next time I see him. What are you talking about, Naruto? With a startled jump, the blonde was thrown out of his thoughts before turning around to see Renka with a curious look on her face not far away. Slowly calming himself down, he offered a smile to the girl. Geez, Renka, don't sneak up on me like that. You almost gave me a heart attack. The blue-haired girl merely put her hands behind her back with a far-off look on her face. Sorry, but you seemed so distracted and mumbled some stuff to yourself. I got curious. Her coworker seemed to accept her reasoning but also took note that she seemed somewhat uneasy. It's no big deal, Renka, but what's up with you? You seem a bit fidgety today. This caused the girl to turn somewhat pink in the face and recoil a bit. Truth was, since this morning she'd been keeping her distance from Naruto and had diverted her eyes from his every time they got close. Renka could feel her heart racing a bit as she recalled Hakubi's advice. If your heart tells you to act, you should follow it. Thus she'd been trying to work up the courage to possibly ask Naruto out, but as expected she was too nervous to come out and say it. Now that she had his attention, however, it seemed like the right time to give it a shot. With a gulp and her heart continuing to race, she slowly took a deep breath, gaining the blonde's full attention. Well, you see, Naruto, there was something I've been meaning to ask you till now and I haven't found the right words to say it. Naruto, of course, couldn't see the obvious meaning behind her words and instead simply gave her another smile that only served to make her more nervous. Well, what is it? I'm all ears. All the while this was going on, Hakubi, Ryu, and Shokatsu, as well as many of the patrons in the restaurant, were watching the scene intently, though keeping their viewing discreet. Hakubi chuckled to himself. Looks like Renka's finally going to make the first move. I knew that advice I gave her would be a push in the right direction. Ryu watched with interest while Shokatsu tried to hide his own interest in the situation and was failing at it. Renka, however, was still having trouble asking. Damn it, why does this have to be so hard? Just come out and say it already. You okay, Renka? Your face is all red. The girl could feel her breath shorten as she saw Naruto's face not too far away from her own with a look of concern on it. All those watching were now on the edge of their seats, waiting to see what would happen next. Unable to handle all the close proximity, and her heart now beating a mile per minute, Renka opened her mouth with her eyes closed. I was wondering if maybe. This is it. All those present said, either verbally or mentally. Naruto simply stared at the girl, who was ready to finish her sentence when all of a sudden a loud ringing drowned her out. Hakubi and his two disciples' face faltered while many of the customers watching merely slumped back into their seats. Worse was Renka, who was now simply standing in place, completely shell-shocked by her failed attempt. With an apologetic look on his face, Naruto quickly pulled out his cell phone before mouthing out an apology to the still stunned Renka. With a frustrated growl, he answered it. Listen, whoever this is, I'm kind of busy at the… Wait, what? Everyone looked at Naruto with concern as suddenly rage filled his face before he angrily shut his phone and stuffed it into his pocket. He then turned to Hakubi. Sorry, Master Hakubi, something just came up, I have to go, sorry. He politely bowed to the old man before turning to Renka, who was by now out of her shock. Sorry about that, Renka. I get back as soon as I can and then you can tell me what you wanted to say, alright? Offering her one last smile, he bolted out the door. Silence fell over the place. Everyone's attention shifted to Renka, who was now quivering all over. Ryu slowly made his way over to the girl, offering her a calming hand. It's okay, Renka, you'll get another. He quickly drew his hand back when he saw how angry she looked. Ah, crap. Without even blinking, the girl quickly bolted into the back room before the sounds of objects being thrown, dishes being broken, along with words like I can't believe I screwed that up. And damn cell phones, I almost said it, could be heard. Hakubi merely let out a dissatisfied sigh. Sorry about that, everyone, she'll be okay once she cools off. His eyes then drifted towards the exit where the angry blonde had exited. Whatever came up, it must have been very serious for him to take off like that. I wonder what it was. Scene changed the streets. Naruto took off like a bullet with no care about revealing his skills to those present, as his rage pushed him to move even faster. Now clad in his Fener clothes, he quickly made his way to an abandoned part of town with only one thought on his mind. Loki, Hermit, you guys better not be planning what I think, or else I'm gonna have to kick both your asses. Chapter 11. Those damn idiots, I can't believe they went and pulled something like this. Those were the thoughts running through Naruto, aka Fener, as he soared down the roadways to an old abandoned section of the city, showing no regard for subtlety or keeping his skills a secret. Adrenaline was pumping throughout his body like a locomotive engine, pushing him to move faster than one would expect a person of his age to run. Yet his blue eyes held a look of anger and focus as he raced across the pavement, barely taking a breath. Though the blonde's body was currently on autopilot, as his mind was deeply focused on the phone message he received mere moments ago. Listen, Fener, I shouldn't be telling you this, but I've heard that Loki somehow managed to get his hands of Kenichi, Shirahama's little sister, and is holding her hostage at the abandoned church downtown. Also, Hermit's with him, thought you should know. The message came to him like being dunked in a vat of ice water, which served to drown out the actual voice and recognizing the individual who told him. Though that information was rather pointless at this moment, as the blonde took off in a rage towards the location, determined to stop the Fourth Fist's plan. Loki's very image only served to add fuel to the ever-growing inferno that was Fener's rage at his usage of such a lowbrow tactic, especially given Fener's extreme contempt for such an idea. True, Loki had given Fener a place and friends in this new world. However, The ninth fist simply couldn't find a way to excuse his actions and wasn't going to hesitate to teach the devious individual a lesson the hard way. The thought of Loki brought another image to mind, one that brought about a look of disappointment to the blonde's otherwise stone-like visage. Hermit, Natsu, I can't believe you'd actually be willing to go along with a plan like this, especially after what I told you last time. Are you really willing to go this far just to satisfy your own anger and ego? Damn it! His feet continued to pound against the concrete as the ninth fist moved faster towards the church, his eyes slowly reassembling those of a true wolf, a fierce predator with a target in sight. Hermit, you'd better come to your sense soon, 'cause if you don't I'm gonna have to beat some sense into you and that bastard Loki. As he thought those last words, a flash of lightning and cry of thunder echoed across the darkened skies of the area that resonated across the land. Scene change. Ryozampiku. Strange, I feel something in the air? What's the problem, Elder? Do you sense something? The Elder Furinji looked to Kensei, whose face remained in a stern visage, completely devoid of his usual mirth. Though the jolly master merely sighed as his eyes drifted towards the now thunderous skies. It seems as if the heavens themselves are roaring with violent cries of battle that will soon take place. I have a feeling Kenichi will be faced with a far greater challenge than any he has faced since. The elder then reached down and picked up a cup of tea before taking a calming sip. Let's just hope that when the time comes he will know the course of action he must take. Scene change. Church. Hee, won't be long before that idiot Shirahama shows up. Loki spoke to no one in particular as he played with another wire puzzle, seated in one of the pews of the church. Hermit was not far away, leaning against one of the old rotten stone pillars with his hood obscuring his face, though one could tell he wasn't in a very good mood. Hey you jerk, don't talk bad about my brother, he'll beat you up good. The fourth fist stopped playing with his puzzle for a moment, though without losing his grin. His eyes turned to the main source of his mirth, who was currently tied to another of the pillars, Anoka Shirahama. The young girl had an irritable look on her face but was otherwise completely unharmed, didn't stop her from complaining about every little thing every 5 minutes, and was currently past due for another complaint. Loki, however, continued to smirk at her before returning to his puzzle. That's exactly what we're counting on, girlie, though in the meantime I'd appreciate it if you kept your mouth shut for a while. The young girl, however, merely puffed her cheeks in annoyance, and diverted her gaze from him. Though after a moment, almost on schedule, she spoke again. Can I get some water? I'm really thirsty, and it's really dusty in here. The girl coughed for emphasis, though it didn't get much of reaction out of Loki, who probably would have told her, I don't give a damn. Hermit, however, did react and slowly made his way to the door, obviously to comply with the girl's request. Just where do you think you're going, Hermit? The hooded fist stopped in place but didn't turn to face the fourth fist, who also remained in the same place. After a moment, the silent Kempo user spoke. I'm gonna get the brat some water so she'll shut up and stop coughing. Anoka seemed to ignore the comment about being a brat, and looked genuinely happy at the attention she was garnering. Loki, however, was different, as with a sigh he got up from his seat and made his way towards his lower-ranked comrade. Listen, Hermit, why don't you just sit back down and forget about the girl for now? She's not gonna die if we don't give her a drink, so there's no reason to worry. Hermit, however, didn't seem like he was willing to comply, though he displayed his displeasure by turning to face Loki, who smirked at his obvious response. Now, Hermit, you don't really want to fight me, do you? After all, it's Shirahama you want? The sixth and fourth fist stared at each other and remained in a stalemate until the pair felt a rather hostile aura approaching, causing Loki's grin to grow as a loud voice echoed through the church. Loki, give me back Anoka, you bastard! The sound of the iron gate to the front of church being smashed and hitting the ground caused Loki's grin to form a full-blown evil smile. So he's finally shown up, now it gets interesting. Hermit naturally kept his focus on the door and walked quickly to face his adversary, though not before he caught a quick glance of Anoka, who looked back with pleading eyes. The sight of her caused Hermit to hear the words Fener had spoken to him not long ago. I may not have known your sister, but I do know she wanted you to live a happy and fulfilled life, not to stay stuck in the past. It's hard to believe me, I know, but you've just got to let go, Natsu, and move forward. Hermit's stride slowed somewhat as the words weighed on his mind like a block of lead, yet he shrugged it off, continuing forward. Sorry, Fener, however, I have to do this. It may not be the way I'd like it, but I've come too far to stop now. The sixth fist placed both of his hands on the rotten doors before pulling them open with a resounding creak. His cold, emotionless eyes quickly caught sight of Kenichi Shirahama standing but 15 feet away. Though this was a far cry from the weak and terrified boy he'd fought with on the bus. Gone were his eyes filled with terror, and instead replaced with focused and rage-filled orbs that seemed to peer into him. The look actually merited an invisible smirk from Hermit. Looks like this time he'll get serious for once. Good. Kenichi took a step forward, his teeth gritting in anger, as he raised his arm and pointed directed at Hermit. Hermit, you bastard, give me back my sister right now! Another loud boom of thunder and crash of lightning erupted at his words. The sixth fist, however, remained calm and steadfast. You really think it's going to be that simple, Shirahama? Hate to break it to you, but the only way you're getting to her is through me, and this time you won't be running away. He quickly shifted into his Kempo stance, ready to battle. Kenichi had yet to lose any of his fire, dropping into his own stance, showing he was prepared to go all the way. I don't have any intention of running away this time. You Ragnarok guys have gone too far this time, and now I'm gonna make you pay. Hermit's formerly invisible smirk stretched to his face. Well then, Shirahama, why don't you show me what you've got so I finally knock some sense into the naive head of yours? With another strike of lightning that seemed to divide the two, both charged towards each other, each letting out a resounding battle cry. Hermit lashed forward with a sideways knife strike, which collided with Kenichi's right fist. The collision resounded like a gunshot, and a great deal of air was released, yet both remained together as if stuck with glue. Each individual's arm was shaking, trying to force their opponent back with little success on either front. All the while their gazes met one another with burning determination, anger, bitterness, and the intent to kill. This was no longer some casual street fight, but a true battle between martial artists that could very easily turn into a death match. My, they're really going at it. I know, man, kids these days have a lot of energy. Unbeknownst to the combatants, there were two very skilled and very powerful observers watching the battle take place as if it were a match on TV. Said individuals were Kenichi's karate master Sakaki and jujutsu master Akasame. Despite the tense atmosphere melded with kidnapping and possible death, neither master seemed particularly worried. If anything, they were a little too casual about it. This should be a long fight. Good thing I brought plenty of booze. Sakaki quickly grabbed one of his six-packs before chopping the top off with his bare hands. Akasame, on the other hand, merely watched the scene intently as the two fighters eventually pushed themselves apart from each other yet remained steady. Yes, seems both of them have improved quite a bit since they last fought. Should be an excellent bout for sure. As Sakaki continued to drink, he paused for a minute. Remind me, is that hooded kid that Fener guy that beat Kenichi and Neo before? His tone, though somewhat playful, contained his hidden intent to meet the infamous fighter who'd garnered so much attention as of late. Akasame, however, merely shook his head. Sorry to tell you this, Sakaki, but that's defiantly not him. The hooded boy you're thinking of uses Kapirio, while I'm certain the boy Kenichi's fighting uses Chinese Kempo. Besides, even if he does show up, what exactly would you do? Akasame somewhat regretted his words as the brash street fighter's aura started to flare and a scary grin appeared on his face. Oh, nothing much, just like to have a little talk with him is all. The jujutsu master's sweat dropped at the obvious implication. The last time Sakaki had talked with someone, he ended up in the emergency room for 6 months. Better make sure to keep my drunken friend here on a short leash. Deciding to drop the issue, he redirected the muscular man back at the fight and his beer, his attention quickly lost. Yet Akasame wasn't completely focused on the fight himself, though I would be lying if I said I wasn't interested in meeting this Fener myself. Though I'd at least try and be a bit more civil about it. Scene change. Why do I suddenly feel like I should start running in the opposite direction? Never mind, gotta keep moving. The blonde quickly shook the uneasiness he felt and continued forward. All the while the once clear skies grew ever darker and the thunder and lightning continued to strike. As he grew closer and closer towards his target, the ninth fist could feel himself tense up even more as only a small distance was between him and his destination. Just have to turn around this corner, and it's a straight shot to the church. Without losing any speed, the hooded blonde quickly spun around the corner and towards the pathway that would lead to the church. Hey you, hold it! Eyes widened at the word. The blonde was brought to a screeching halt as he looked to the source of the noise. At the sight not far ahead, the blonde's face hardened into a deep frown and growled in aggravation. Not you two again. Suffice to say, Fenrir was not happy, as standing but 20 feet away was the person who not long ago had literally drilled him almost 4 feet into solid concrete. Mio Furinji, wasn't expecting to run into you again so soon. His eyes centered on the blonde girl, currently clad in her skin-tight purple leotard and light red short-sleeved jacket, her face showing obvious contempt and equally matched annoyance. I could say the same for you. The two remained in a standoff not unlike the one that occurred at their first encounter, though the ninth fist's eyes drifted slightly. Though I can see you decided to bring some backup along with you. A little uneasy, are we? The blonde clenched her teeth at the implication weakness. Alongside the obviously aggravated girl were 3 others, including of course the leader and founder of the Shinpaku Alliance, Haruo Nijima, currently shaking in fear at the sight of the freighting fist, recalling his own encounter. Currently standing between the demon-like teen were 2 individuals Fenrir had yet to encounter, though from a single glance he could tell they were fighters. The taller of the 2 was the one their so-called leader was hiding behind. He stood easily above 6 feet with a rather bulky build in a simple white collared shirt with black pants and white shoes. He had short spiky hair that was mostly shaved in the back with a narrow unmarked face, save a small scar on the lower left side of his cheek. Over his eyes was a simple pair of sunglasses that, despite the current lighting, didn't seem to hinder his vision. Said individual seemed a little uneasy but ready to defend himself if anything could be read by his stance. The other individual seemed the more skilled and powerful of the 2, emitting a fair amount of confidence. Unlike his comrade, he had a much more narrow but still muscular build, clad in a blue jacket, black pants, blue shoes and bandages wrapped around his hands. He had a much narrower face than his friend, with brown eyes and strangely light blue hair done in a ponytail. Though no conflict had been established, he was already in a ready stance with both fists raised and his legs shoulder-width apart, a smirk on his face. By the looks of things, the larger guy, given his size, probably is mainly a power-based fighter, so he probably fights using wrestling or maybe grappling techniques. Though despite his size, looks like he's pretty scared of me. As for the other one, judging by his posture and the wrappings on his hands, must be a boxer, and a good one given how quickly he jumped into his stance. Wait a minute, I'm pretty sure I know who these guys are. Yukita the thrower and Takeda the puncher, right? You 2 used to be members of Ragnarok from what I've been told before you decided to jump ship and betrayed the group. Yukita didn't register much from his words, though Takeda merely smiled, never letting down his guard. Wasn't anything personal, just figured I shouldn't waste my skills fighting for a bunch of low-level thugs when I can use them to protect and help my real friends out, though can't say we've had the pleasure even though you know our names. Fener, instead of speaking, allowed Mio to speak for him, obviously wanting to have herself heard. His name is Fenrir, and apparently he's the 9th fist of Ragnarok. Yukita's eyes shot up from behind his glasses at the revelation. 9th fist? You've got to be kidding me. First with Kazara there were 8 fists, now you're telling me we've got another one to worry about. Takeda, however, didn't seem worried. If anything, he seemed excited. A new deadly fist. Well, congrats, my friend. You must be good if they were willing to make you a fist so quickly. Fenrir didn't really respond to the praise, obviously not interested in small talk, though took notice of something. Odd, from what I'd been told in Ragnarok you only used your right arm to fight and never even moved your left. Apparently it was paralyzed, and that's what led you to join Ragnarok. At the mention of that fact, the boxer raised his now mobile left fist and pointed it right at Fenrir. You're right, buddy, that's exactly what happened. However, thanks to Kenichi's help I can use both my arms again and get back in the ring. Though I've been meaning to try out my left arm on a worthy opponent, and I think you're just the right person for the job. Yukita slowly moved to his friend's side. Easy, Takeda. The last time you tried fighting one of the fists you got laid out on the pavement. If we take him together, got it? The blue-haired boxer saw little point in arguing with his tall friend, and quickly got into his ready stance along with Yukita. Though Fenrir could only growl in annoyance. I'm sorry, but I don't have time to play with you right now. I have somewhere I need to be. His words only caused the 2 to advance forward some more, with Takeda losing the mirth from his eyes and voice. If you're talking about getting to Kenichi so you can kick his ass again, then you might as well stay put, pal. As long as we're here, you're not going anywhere. Without even thinking, Takeda and Yukita rushed towards the ninth fist, with Yukita picking up speed and rushing ahead. Both of his arms spread out ready to grab the ninth fist whilst he screamed out, "Get set to get thrown, pal." Both teens closed the gap towards the non-moving fist, adrenaline pushing them forward. Sadly, it also served to drown out the cries of stop and halt coming from Nejima and Neo as they watched the pair close in. Fener merely watched the two come closer with a look of frustration on his face. "I really don't have time for this crap." In an instant, the ninth fist disappeared, causing Yukita and Takeda's eyes to widen. Where'd he? Neither could finish their sentences as a black blur suddenly whisked past them. Both felt a pressure on one of their legs below and on the side of the knee. It felt as if two hands were pushing their leg in both directions before it was hoisted off the ground, and both found themselves in the air. It all happened so fast that neither knew what was happening till they could suddenly only see the black sky above them. Yet Takeda, before hitting the ground, managed to lean his head back just enough to see Fener with his back to them, now standing not far from where they had started charging, looking over his shoulder slightly at them. With a cold tone he quietly muttered out, "Tesura, de frente, scissors." The only thought running through either of their minds before they both collided with the concrete was, "What? How did he?" Both hit the ground hard, each coughing and grunting in pain at the hard collision. Nejima's mouth dropped to the floor as his eyes widened drastically, all the while sputtering out barely audible sentence fragments. "How, when, who? How the hell did he do that? Better yet, just what the heck did I just see?" "It's called Tesura de frente." Nejima's black eyes darted to Mio, who was staring at Fener and his handiwork intensely, her eyes seemingly analyzing every detail of what had just happened. The blonde's eyes didn't leave the battlefield yet, could tell her friend needed an explanation. Tesura means scissors in Portuguese. It's a technique in capoeira that aims for the legs with the intention of breaking down your opponent's stance and knocking them to the floor. By hooking one's outside leg to the calf of your opponent, and your other leg to the inner thigh, trapping the leg at the knee, then twisting the torso, you can knock your opponent off balance and off their feet. Mio's explanation seemed to help Nejima put the pieces of the puzzle together, as he quickly scribbled the information into his PDA. Though he could tell something was off with Mio's obviously tense and uneasy. Then again, can't say I blame her. The last time she fought this guy, he nearly burned her abdomen off. After that little display, anyone would be on edge. Just hope you can handle him better this time. Mio, on the other hand, had different thoughts on her mind as she was replaying what she just seen in slow motion, mentally reducing Fener from his black blur-like state just a few moments ago to reveal him performing the previously mentioned technique twice in quick succession. Even though I'm no capoeira expert, pulling off simultaneous Tesura de frente at that kind of speed isn't an easy thing to pull off. Really shows just how tough this guy truly is, especially considering both Yukita and Takeda are experienced fighters and former Ragnarok members. Though I'd better handle this, no way the others would even stand a chance against him. Her decision made Mio step forward, facing Fener with a look of an unmovable expression, though Nejima could easily read it. Looks like Mio's gonna fight him after all. Not really much I can do to stop her. Then again, she is one of my subordinates, and it's their job to protect their leader, especially in times of serious danger, so no worries. Mio slowly moved in front of Nejima, cutting him off from Fener, who seemed somewhat distracted. "You really should keep your focus when fighting against multiple opponents, Fener, otherwise you'll end up leaving yourself open." The ninth fist remained silent at her words, though obviously tensing up at the implication, as Mio slowly shifted into a stance. Fener growled in frustration at the girl's action. "Listen, Furinji, I don't have time to play with you or your little high school fight club. I have some place I need to be right now, and I'm not in the mood to put up with your crap. Now move." He spoke the last words with ferocity present in his voice, yet Mio remained steadfast, managing to push back the angry fighter's killing intent, her own face hardening as certain thoughts ran through her mind. "If you're planning to help out your friends beat up Kenichi, then you might as well forget it. I'm not letting you go anywhere." That merited another much louder, almost animalistic growl from the now enraged fist at his path being blocked, his eyes reflecting his growing bestial frustration, actually causing Nejima to get chills. "Just what the hell makes you think for even 1 second you can stop me? If I remember correctly, the last time you and I fought I managed to lay you out flat on your cocky little ass. The blonde grit her teeth in remembrance of the encounter, her right hand reflexively reaching towards her now healed abdomen, recalling the white-hot heat of his flame-coated kick. Fenrir saw the girl was distracted and decided to make his move. He quickly leapt towards the nearby wall intending to jump it and make his way to the church. Instead, however, just as he was about to reach it, the blonde found himself leaning back a nearly impossible level to avoid a fast kick to the face, just barely missing his nose before placing his feet on the wall and pushing himself back to his original spot. He unleashed a roar of aggravation at interference, looking up with piercing eyes of hatred at Mio currently standing atop the wall he intended to jump. Just what the hell are you trying to prove here? I don't have any quarrel with you anymore, nor do you have one with me at the moment, so why the hell do you insist on interfering and, more importantly, pissing me off? The blonde prodigy merely leapt off the wall and entered into her crane stance, looking into his rage-filled eyes with a calm and focused gaze. Sorry, but you're wrong about that, I'm afraid. See, you hurt Kenichi twice and attacked my friends multiple times. Your so-called comrades even dragged Kenichi's sister into this mess, and are probably planning to do who knows what to her and Kenichi. As far as I'm concerned, I have plenty of reason to fight you, so you'd better prepare yourself, cause I promise you things are going to be different from the last time we fought. The ninth fist found himself clenching his teeth with unbelievable fury, as if trying to chew through a cable at the girl's attempts to halt him. This made all the more maddening given the situation. Yet he could find no alternative, as the girl in front of him was no amateur, as he had learned firsthand and couldn't be fooled with simple tricks. Thus the rage-filled fist slowly released a calming breath, easing the inferno within his mind and letting his anger out. His now peaceful gaze met Mio's determined one, obviously showing he was ready to fight. The hooded fist slowly shifted into his Jenga stance, moving from side to side ready to fight. Seems you've left me with no other choice. Just don't expect me to be as civil the last time we fought, nor as gentle. I'll end this quickly. Mio merely looked at him with a stone-cold face, her expression never changing. I learned plenty from our last fight, and I won't fall for the same tricks twice. You'd better be ready. The tension in the air was built as felt by the three fighters present, so tense was it that none could sense another pair of eyes watching through a small hole in one of the walls. The hidden individual at first glance appeared to be none other than the infamous Fourth Fist Loki, orchestrator of the entire affair. However, upon closer inspection one would notice the much thinner face and less muscular physique held by this individual. Said imposter was another of Loki's many shadow doubles, who had originally been sent by Loki along with others to halt the Shinpaku's movement. Though with the arrival of Fener the group saw that their assistance was no longer needed. Though that didn't stop this particular individual from staying behind to watch things go down, as he pulled out a walkie-talkie. Loki, come in, can you hear me? What do you want, you dolt? Shirahama's already here and Hermit's beating the crap out of him. Though I'm hoping your calling means you managed to deal with those annoying Shinpaku idiots and their freaky alien leader. Actually, sir, thing is we were about to confront them, but odd thing is Fenrir showed up. Fenrir showed up? You fucking idiot, why the hell didn't you tell me sooner? He'll screw up everything if he shows up. The shadow had to cover up the speaker to muffle out most of the noise from his angry leader. So what's the problem? Isn't Fener on our side? Plus he's a fist, so he should be more than a match for the Shinpaku members, right? That's not the point, you dumbass. Fener made it perfectly clear he would be against this little plan of ours from the start. Why do you think I didn't include him in the first place? If he shows up, I have no doubt he'll free the girl and try to use my face as a punching bag. Well, if it makes you feel any better, boss, he's fighting Neo Furinji right now, and it doesn't seem like she's gonna let him go anywhere. At his words, Loki's voice seemed to adopt a much calmer and more normal tone. The Furinji girl's there. That's perfect. After their last encounter, there's no way in hell she'll let him come within 100 miles of Shirahama. Still, I want you to keep a close eye on them. Even if they fight, I've got a feeling that won't stop Fener from trying to fuck up the plan, so you'd better keep me informed or else, understand? Sweating at the promise of pain, the shadow saluted to the small device. I understand, sir. Good. After that the walkie went dead and the shadow let loose a breath to relieve his tension. Geez, I thought Loki was supposed to be a god of trickery, not torture. I really should have listened to Mom and stayed in school. Damn, my luck sucks ass. Musing over his unfair life, the doppelganger resumed his observation of the battle commencing, all the while another fight was taking place not too far away. Scene change: church battlefield. What's with this idiot? How did he get this good in such a short amount of time? Those were the thoughts running through the mind of Hermit as he surprisingly found himself on the defensive from a rather brutal series of punches, kicks and strikes from a very determined and pissed off Kenichi Shirahama. The two had only been exchanging blows for a minute or two, but Hermit could already see this Kenichi was a far cry from the weakling shaking in his boots that time on the bus. To that end, Hermit had to give the guy some credit with his improvement, considering their fight had only been roughly 2 or so weeks prior. The difference in skill level was considerable, and even Hermit was impressed. Though that being said, he wasn't a slouch either and wasn't about to let Shirahama come out on top. He showed his resolve as his opponent unleashed another fierce punch, only for Hermit to quickly divert the punch with his right arm before swing behind Kenichi, and then chopping him to the back of the neck with his left. Normally such an attack would have rendered the teen unconscious, but he barely leaned forward from the attack and instead quickly turned his head before rotating his body and shooting his leg up fast and hard. Hermit, however, reacted quickly, just managing to flip backwards to avoid the tip of his opponent's toes. Quickly flipping backwards a few feet, he put some distance between his opponent before letting out a breath and getting back into his stance. His cold eyes looked at the fact of his opponent, completely devoid of fear or doubt, only radiating focus towards his objective. Have to say you've certainly improved quite a bit since our last encounter, Shirahama. However, don't think that means you've got a chance in hell of beating me. Oddly enough, Kenichi didn't respond at first, with his face shadowed by his hair, yet Hermit could see him shaking at which he assumed was fear. Why, Hermit? Said Fist's eyes narrowed at the question as he dropped out of his stance for a moment. Why what? Kenichi didn't respond at first, then his face shot up, revealing a look of pure loathing and anger. Why the hell did you have Tio get Anoka involved in this? Anger radiated off of each word he spoke. The sheer volume of emotion contained in each vibration actually sent a chill up Hermit's spine. Yet his visage remained cold and unresponsive as he continued to stare at his still angry opponent. If you Ragnarok guys wanted to fight me, that's fine, I would have gladly accepted. You didn't have to get my sister or my friends involved. At those words, Hermit actually chuckled a little at the implication, meriting a look of confusion from Kenichi that actually caused him to lighten up somewhat. Oh, what's so funny? Hermit's laughter seemed somewhat humorless and more cynical in a way, though only slightly. Really, I find that pretty ironic coming from you. If I remember correctly, the last time you and I fought, you spent the entire time screaming like a cat on the freeway trying to find a way not to fight me. Kenichi's confident face dropped completely as he recalled his rather unmanly behavior at the aforementioned encounter. However, the sixth fist was far from done in his little downplay of Kenichi. Also, Valkyrie told me that the very first time you and Fener met, you took off at 60 miles an hour in the other direction. Kenichi's face somewhat hardened at the mention of Fener, though not much considering what was being told was the truth. Yet Hermit's face slowly hardened as his stance resumed. Though regardless of those facts, simple thing is, it's your own fault for being so naive. Kenichi looked at Hermit with a confused face. You said that to me the last time we fought, that I was naive. What exactly am I so naive about? Hermit's stance tightened as his face became stone cold. That you believe that people in this world won't resort to using deception and trickery to get what they want. Kenichi's eyes widened as he flashed back to when he first learned of Hermit, or rather Natsu's true nature, and who he talked about spending his whole life playing the role of a nice guy just to get what he wanted in life. Here he was bringing it up again, and like before, Kenichi was still as confused as he was before. I don't understand what you're talking about, Hermit. All I know is that you have my sister, and I'm going to get her back. Kenichi dropped into his stance and prepared to continue. Hermit, however, as he spoke, found himself thinking back to his past and the events that had shaped him into the person he was today. The images of his dying sister, the years he spent alone, and all the betrayals in his life caused the sixth fist's teeth to grit in anger. Yet at that moment another image came to his mind that seemed to block out his memories. You've just got to let go and move forward, Natsu. That damn idiot can't stop listening to his speeches even when he's not around. The sixth fist's eyes softened, if only for a moment, at Fener's words. As much as the sixth fist hated to admit it, really hated to admit it, a tiny part of him was grateful for Fener's concern. Despite growing up not trusting anybody, Hermit wasn't so paranoid that he could just ignore the obvious worry in his comrade's voice and complete lack of deceit. More so, what he'd said prior had really made Hermit really consider not just his current actions, but also his overall perspective on life. Still, his words only served as a small reprieve as Hermit quickly shook them off before regaining his stone-faced visage and returning to his Kenpo stance. Well, sure, Hama, if you want her back so badly, then you're gonna have to beat me. At that instant, rain started to fall from the sky, which only served to add to the already tense atmosphere. Both fighters charged at each other, striking out hard with fierce intent. Said attacks collided with tremendous force. Both were mere inches apart as they glanced at each other, neither individual giving an inch. The standoff only lasted for a second before Hermit went on the offensive and delivered a hard kick to Kenichi's exposed chest, shoving his enemy back a few inches, though he started to slide across the now muddy surface. Seeing his enemy drop his guard, Hermit switched stances and instead aimed a powerful palm strike towards his enemy. Kenichi, however, was ready for him and quickly caught the attack before it hit, before swiftly placing his leg in between Hermit's and managing to knock him off balance enough to get him into a judo throw. The sixth fist could only look on in surprise as he tossed over his enemy's shoulder on a collision course with the ground. Thinking quickly, the sixth fist swiftly flipped his body forward before slamming his feet hard onto the muddy ground. Doing so allowed him to avoid the worst of the technique and get back on the offensive. Quickly breaking free of his stunned opponent's grasp, Hermit lashed a knife strike to the left side of Kenichi's neck before following with a hard punch to the stomach and finishing with a strong chop to the back of the neck. The combination came too fast for him to react, and the so-called strongest disciple found himself with the taste of mud and grass in his mouth. Hermit merely looked down on his opponent with a look of anger and disinterest. All the while the rain pelted against his skin. His opponent seemed immobile, and Hermit almost chose to head back to the church. Yet he'd quickly learned not to underestimate this particular opponent even when he'd been overwhelmed. Said thoughts were well merited as the battered disciple slowly struggled to make his way to his feet. After a moment or two he was back on his feet, and a look of fire still present in his eyes. All Hermit could do is sigh at the tenacity his opponent was showing, yet oddly enough Hermit didn't feel quite so angry at Kenichi despite the fact he refused to stay down. It was actually puzzling the sixth fist at how it felt as though some of his rage and bitterness seemed to leave him. Yet it was a thought he moved to the back of his mind, and he prepared to go again as the battle in the rain continued. Scene change, Naruto vs. Mio Round 2. Just what the hell am I looking at? Those were the thoughts running through the mind of Takeda as he watched Mio and the ninth fist of Ragnarok clash against each other, using skills and moves he never dreamed a human could pull off except in movies and anime. Fener leapt himself backwards before landing on his left foot, and pushing himself forward using the added speed and momentum to flip himself forward and slam his right leg out flat. Mio quickly leapt back to avoid the attack, causing the extended leg to slam onto the ground. Though Fener quickly recovered, leaning to his side before performing a fast-paced windmill maneuver, actually creating a bit of a whirlwind before kicking himself up to his feet and using the momentum to push himself right to Mio without even pausing. Once near, he turned into a spin kick, yet once again she avoided it by quickly placing her hands onto the incoming kick, pushing it away from him. Though she was far from done as she actually lifted her body off the ground like she was leaping a fence, and then rotated her hips and feet directly towards Fener's face, who unfortunately couldn't dodge the attack. Smash! Those present winced slightly at the kicks to the face, though they quickly cringed as Mio actually grabbed the stunned fist's shoulders before pushing his body down enough to deliver a knee strike to his abdomen, actually causing air and spit to fly from his mouth. Yet she still wasn't done as Mio released her enemy before flipping backwards and having her back leg smash into Fener's chin, sending him flying. At first glance it looked like he'd been dispatched, though it only lasted for an instant as Fener quickly spun rapidly in midair before actually using his legs to push himself backwards and land on his feet. He slowly raised himself to standing position before dusting himself off. Mio was still on guard, watching the ninth fist actually reach to his face mask before quickly pulling it down and turning to the side and spitting out some blood. She wasn't able to see his face as the mask was quickly reapplied and his cold gaze met hers. He didn't say anything and instead merely cracked his neck in response before responding, "Is that all you've got?" Surprisingly, Mio merely narrowed her eyes at his comment. Her guard remained strong. "Of course not. That was just a warm-up." Her stance slowly shifted into a more offensive one as her eyes narrowed into a rather cold gaze. "Have to say I'm pretty surprised you and your comrades would actually stoop to something as low as kidnapping a little girl. Are you really so desperate for a fight that you'd use such low-brow tactics?" Fener didn't respond at first, though one could tell he didn't take the comment, as he quickly got back into Jenga. "I'm not really interested in answering your question since I doubt my words would be able to penetrate that thick skull of yours." Mio actually stuck out her tongue at him for the intelligence crack as he continued, "However, don't start lumping me or my other comrades in the same group as scum like Loki. The second I get the chance, I'm gonna be paving the streets with that guy's face." The Shinpaku members actually looked at the ninth fist with shock as his tone was obviously containing serious anger, and no deceit. Though Najima, who was a master of lies and deceit, was even surprised. "Weird, he's defiantly not lying from what I can tell. Looks like the relationship between the fists isn't as ironclad as I thought." An evil thought ran through his head as a pair of demon-like antennas appeared on his head. "We could possibly use this to our advantage. If we let this guy pass and beat the crap out of Loki, then we can further put wedge into the fist's loyalties and ultimately tear them apart. Perhaps even recruit this guy to the Shinpaku." He let out an evil chuckle at his so-called genius plan whilst Mio contemplated what Fener had just said. "What should I do? The last time we fought, this guy didn't have any problem kidnapping Najima and using him as a hostage. Then again, knowing Najima, he probably had it coming. Also, I don't know why, but despite all Fener's put Kenichi and me through, he doesn't seem like the kind of person who'd encourage kidnapping a little girl." Mio's eyes peered into Fener's, which though cold also held a small amount of light to them that seemed to support what she was thinking. The blonde contemplated and thought her options through, before finally she let out a sigh and moved out of her fighting stance, puzzling Fener. "What exactly are you doing? Have you decided to give up and let me pass?" Mio merely shook her head in response to him. "I'm not exactly giving up, cause I still feel like you need to be taught a lesson for all you've done in the past. However, I also believe that you want to help save Kenichi's sister too. So I'll let you pass." Takeda and Yukita's faces turned rapidly to the girl, mouths opened in shock, while Najima smirked and chuckled quietly at the girl's actions. "That's right, Neo, throw the wolf a bone. Make him trust us so we can slowly turn him and the other fists against one another. He 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 he." Fener, however, wasn't completely convinced as he was still on the defensive. "You're really gonna let me go just like that even after all the grief I've given you and your friends?" He saw her face held no trace of deception, and given the time frame, he wasn't really in a position to argue. So the ninth fist slowly got out of his stance, his eyes never leaving the girl in front of him, ready to react should she try something. He quickly leapt forward, flipping himself over the girl in one big move, though kept his back to the girl without saying a word. Though just as he prepared to take off, he quietly muttered out, "Thanks," before he took off like a bullet in the direction of the church. All was silent for a moment before Takeda quickly ran up to Mio with Yukita not far behind. "Honey, what the hell were you thinking? You just let that guy go right past you, and now he's probably gonna help his Ragnarok buddies gang up on Kenichi." Mio, however, merely stared at the path Fener took. "Sorry, Takeda, but I just felt like at least for the moment I could trust him with this. It's hard to explain, but even though I've only met him once before and what I've heard about him from Kenichi, he doesn't seem like the kind of person who'd go along with a plan like this. I just feel like he can be trusted here." Takeda really couldn't come up with a response and instead merely scratched his head in frustration. "You're taking a pretty big gamble with that decision, Mio. If you're wrong, then Kenichi will be in for some serious trouble." Mio quickly turned to Takeda with a harsh look on her face. "If that happens, then I'll personally handle Fener and make sure he realizes just how lucky he was when we fought the last time." The blue-haired boxer promptly shut up and backed off, while Mio turned her attention to the alley leading to the church. "We need to get moving. Kenichi may still need our help." Yukita actually nodded along with Takeda. "Yeah, this is Loki we're talking about here, not exactly someone famous for playing by the rules." With a collective nod from everyone, the group quickly started to run towards the church, determined to give their friend backup. Mio, of course, was heading off the pack, her eyes focused squarely on the destination. Hang on, Kenichi, we're on our way. Scene changed the church. Man never would have thought this fight would have taken a turn like this. Yes, certainly is surprising to see the things that inspire and drive some of these kids to study martial arts, whether that motivation be born from determination or desperation. The drunken karate master merely snorted at his friend's overly proper behavior and picked up another beer. The two masters had remained atop their branch watching the fight go on for some time now. Originally it seemed Kenichi was being overpowered and Hermit's skills were too much to overcome. Yet Kenichi's will and desire to protect his sister, as well as the intense physical and mental training he'd endured the last few weeks, were slowly turning the tide in his favor. Though just as Kenichi seemed to pull off an upset, Hermit came back harder than ever and knocked Kenichi down. At this point he'd slowly revealed to Kenichi the source of his anger, telling the tale of how he and his sick little sister Kid were originally orphans that were adopted by a wealthy businessman. In exchange for giving them a home and money for his sister's medical treatments, Hermit was to be groomed to be the company's heir, thus spent a good portion of his childhood miserable yet didn't care. Then the story seemed to take a happier turn when he spoke of how his stepfather had fallen in love with one of his doctors and became the warm, loving parent Natsu had always dreamed of. Then everything turned sour as his father suddenly died under mysterious circumstances and his stepmother was taken away as the prime suspect. Though the most heart-wrenching moments occurred when he told of how without his stepfather, Kid couldn't be taken care of and eventually died from her illness right before his eyes. It was a truly sad tale that managed to penetrate the hearts of even the two seasoned masters who'd seen similar scenarios in their own lives, though that didn't make it any less sad. All the while the tale was told, the rain continued to fall as if the heavens themselves wept for the unfortunate young man who now drowned his pain and sorrow in violence and blood. Hermit merely looked up at the dark clouds whilst the rain pelted his face with a blank expression. Kenichi remained on the ground soaking in all he'd been told, which had managed to shake him to the core. The sixth fist looked at the sky for another moment before speaking in a tone that matched his face. In the end it was through lies and deceit that my whole life was torn apart. I lost everything because of that woman. Slowly he began to chuckle with a mirthless and cynical laugh. Hee hee, it's actually kind of funny when you think about it. Her lies took so much from me, and yet it's those same actions that helped make me who I am today. His chuckling turned into full-blown laughter, as his mind was once again flooded by the painful images of his dark past. I suppose I should thank her in the end. After all, it's because of her that I drove myself to become as strong as I am. She also taught me a very important lesson. Before he spoke, he looked down at Kenichi with the coldest eyes his face had ever held. In the end, all you need in this world to get by are lies and deceit. If you have those, then the world is yours for the taking. The sound of his words actually caused Sakaki to clench his hand so tightly his beer can was crushed, whilst Akasame could only look on sadly at the beliefs Hermit held. Kenichi on the other hand clutched the mud in anger, though not at Hermit himself, as he slowly worked to get to his knees. You're wrong. Hermit's eyes widened slightly as he looked at Kenichi attempting to get to his feet, who continued to struggle yet didn't stop speak as his voice gained volume. If you live your life full of nothing but deceit and struggling for power, you'll end up with nothing but an empty existence. Hermit's eyes narrowed at the young boy's words, though they slowly widened as he managed to get to his feet. How can he still be able to stand? After all the times I've attacked him, he should be finished. Kenichi finally standing let out a roar of effort, fighting against the pain before he resumed his stance, his eyes once again filled with a fire of determination. To really survive in this world, you need to be willing to put your trust in the people around you. Hermit started to growl in anger at the Kenichi's words despite all he told him already. This guy is starting to sound more and more like Fener, and it's starting to piss me off. Kenichi spoke his last words with as much force as he could. Trust your masters, trust your friends, and trust yourself. That is true power. Sakaki and Akasame both smiled at their disciples' words, which though somewhat naive held a great deal of wisdom and power behind them. Hermit prepared to retort when another voice entered the fray. You know he's right, Hermit. All eyes widened before the turn to the source of the voice, meriting a look of shock, fear and anger from Kenichi, curiosity from the two masters, and a look of anger from Hermit, who spoke towards the source with a cold tone. Just what the hell are you doing here, Fenrir? The ninth fist stood in place, ignoring his soaked-through clothing as his ice-cold eyes stared down the two fighters, though taking note of the two masters in the tree but paying them little mind as he made his way towards the two. Well, Hermit, to answer your question, I got a call telling me this asshole I happen to know decided to do something really asinine like kidnapping the younger sister of a person he wanted to fight, and ignore practically everything I'd said to him recently because apparently his ears are so full of his own bullshit he couldn't make out my words. Kenichi's look of fear quickly shifted to confusion at the ninth fist's harsh words, which were oddly enough not directed at him for once. If anything were defending him, is Fener actually angry at Hermit for this? Wait, does that mean he didn't know about this plan? While the disciple contemplated the loyalties on one of his greatest enemies, his karate and judo master's eyes were now focused on the new arrival with great interest. So that's the infamous Fener. I must say he defiantly has the intimidating look down, and he even managed to locate us almost instantly. He's defiantly no ordinary teenager. Sakaki, however, had a different opinion as his aura was currently flaring at the sight of the boy, all the while chuckling rather darkly. I don't know about that, Akisame. All I know is I want to get down there so we can have that little talk I mentioned earlier. Akisame, however, put his hand firmly on his friend's shoulder, keeping him at bay like a leashed dog. Now, Sakaki, you remember the rules. The 100th degree Street Fighter frowned as he recited the rule. A master must never interfere with a disciple's battle unless it's absolutely necessary. Akisame nodded with a smug smile. That's right. Besides, it doesn't look like the kid came here to fight Kenichi. If anything, seems like he may be on his side for a change. Let's just watch and see where this goes, alright? Sakaki grunted in frustration at being told what to do but complied as the two perch masters continued to watch the exchange. Hermit remained unresponsive at first despite the rather harsh and coarse words that we just thrown at him before he decided to respond. Huh? Did you come all this way just to insult me? If so, you're even dumber than I had you pegged for. Fener, however, took the insult in stride, as he now stood not far from the pair before making a glance at Kenichi, who took a step back. Ease up, Shirahama. Kenichi's eyes widened at the oddly enough calm look in the normally ferocious fist's eyes. Though you and I may not be on the best of terms, I didn't come here to fight you, nor do I intend to at any point right now. Kenichi eased up somewhat but remained on guard, something Fener took note of. Interesting, his stance is much stronger than it was the last time we fought, and his eyes are almost devoid fear. Seems he decided to get a backbone after all. Fener's harsh eyes turned to Hermit, still awaiting a response. As for why I'm here, as I said, I got a call telling me this idiot over her decided to pull off this little stunt with Loki, something I was strongly against, and though Captain Angst over here to be smart enough to walk away. Instead, he went along with it, so now I feel it's my civic duty to, if I must, beat some sense into him. Hermit dropped into his stance at the call for attack, looking at his, for lack of better word at the moment, comrade with anger. What is it with you, Fener? What difference does it make how I choose to do things or whose plans I follow? It's none of your concern. Hermit slowly lost his voice as he once again peered into the eyes that froze him in place during their last encounter, eyes as cold and fierce as the eyes of the true beast Fener. It was a look that managed to surprise even the masters at the sheer amount of Ki being emitted from one so young. Kenichi actually found himself sweating under the sheer intensity of it all, which was only magnified when he heard Fener speak. None of my concern, Hermit. It's funny, I thought we'd already had this conversation before. However, if you need a refresher course. In the blink of an eye, Fener appeared right in front of Hermit before smashing into his face with a powerful hard kick that sent the sixth fist flat on his back onto the muddy ground. While Fener looked down upon him in tense anger, then I'm happy to oblige. Kenichi found himself gapping with his jaw down to the ground in shock and sheer confusion at what was taking place. Did I miss something here? Though these guys were here to kick my ass, not each other. Then again, I'm not complaining. Hermit slowly raised his upper body up, quickly causing his hood to fall as he rubbed the red boot print across his face. With a snarl, he looked back up at Fener, though quickly found himself frozen in place by the look as Fener spoke. Listen, Hermit, and listen good. Contrary to how you might feel about me and your typical dick-ass attitude, I do still consider you a comrade. As such, it's part of my job as a comrade to make sure your sorry ass doesn't end up screwing the rest of his life over because he can't let go of the past. Hermit's anger shrunk slightly as he again recalled their brief but informative conversation not too long ago. It had struck a chord in the Sixth Fist's mind and heart, but not enough to change him all that much. As Hermit mused slightly over his thoughts, Fener's intense ki slowly lessened as his eyes adopted a more sorrowful look, one that Hermit recalled once before. Natsu, I've seen what happens to people who follow the path you're on, and trust me, it doesn't lead to anything but an empty void. Fener's tone seemed aged, as if he'd suddenly aged in the blink of an eye. Sakaki and Akasame were somewhat surprised by the boy's tone. Now I'm starting to understand what Kensei meant when he mentioned the look in that kid's eyes. His tone contains a great deal of experience and emotions that shouldn't exist in someone as young as this. Man, this kid must have been through some real kind of hell. Now, gentlemen, we can't have you two fighting. Remember, that's against the rules. Fener's eyes slowly became consumed with rage as they shifted towards the main reason and person who drove him to come. The sight of the blue-haired trickster caused the Capiria warrior to growl like beasts. Loki. Hermit and Kenichi had similar looks on their faces, though Hermit's was more cold and calm, whilst Kenichi's was burning with intense anger. So much so that he took a step forward and pointed at Loki with a look of fury. Loki, where's Anoka, you bastard? Give her back right now. The smiling fist smirked at the boy's frustration, which only grew wider as with each second. Sure thing, Shirahama. I'm nothing if not a reasonable person, and seeing as how you made it this far, you deserve some kind of reward. With a snap of his fingers, his subordinate number 20 emerged from the broken-down church with Anoka locked in a tight grip. With the hostage in sight, Loki redirected his attention to the audience below. There you go, Shirahama. Here she is, safe and sound. Feel any better? Kenichi quickly geared up to charge right for his sister despite being surrounded on all sides when a bright flash near his sister's neck stopped him cold. The young disciple could only look on in horror as his sister's captor had quickly pulled out a 4-inch knife and placed it directly at his sister's jugular. Loki chuckled at the boy's response, waving his finger in disapproval. Sorry Shiraham, but your little stand is over and done with. Unless you want your sister to get cut up, I suggest you stay right where you are. Kenichi slowly felt the rage inside him build as he could barely contain himself from running over, managing to keep himself back for fear of his sister's safety, all the while his rage-filled eyes locked on Loki, his mind filled with images of smashing his fist into that large grin and knocking his teeth in every direction. Yet surprisingly, his thoughts were soon overwhelmed by a loud, almost animalistic growl followed by an intense ki aura. Loki, you fucking piece of shit, this is going way too damn far. Let the girl go, or so help me God, I will personally make every second of your miserable life a living hellish nightmare. Loki actually lost his grin and broke out in a cold sweat at the sheer intense rage coming from Fener. Number 20 could barely keep herself standing, sweat pouring down her back and clothes, just managing to keep a grip on her knife. Thankfully, Anoka's senses were acute enough to register the intense aura, though even she was slightly frightened by Fener's anger. Hermit and Kenichi took a step back at the anger-filled fist, though Kenichi was rather curious at the boy's rage, before turning hesitantly to Hermit. Hermit, what's up with Fener? Aren't you guys supposed to be on the same side? Hermit's eyes moved slightly to acknowledge his enemy's words, but just barely unable to take them off of his houseguest, who was currently leaking out aura that seemed to resemble his master's, only it was much fouler and contained far greater bloodlust. We may be on the same side, Shirahama, but for most of the fists, that's where our loyalties end. That's especially true when it comes to Loki, who's never really been very liked among any of the fists. Though in Fener's case, he's got a particular grudge against him. Kenichi looked unpuzzled at the source of conflict between his enemies, and his facial expression was all Hermit needed to continue. Not long after Fener knocked your girlfriend around, Loki proposed putting this particular little plan of his into action as a way to put you down for good. However, Fener was heavily against it, saying we shouldn't resort to what he called low-brow tactics to fight you. Not quite sure why though. Then again, I really don't see why you should care either, Shirahama. The once cowardly boy flinched a little at the blonde's glare, though not but much, since it seemed to contain less fury than usual. Though Kenichi turned his attention to Fener, still radiating his ki, as he drew closer to Loki. The fourth fist, for all his grandstanding and cocky attitude, was currently trying to maintain his air of confidence at the furious individual slowly making his way over to him. No, come on, Fener, we're on the same team, remember? Don't forget I got you into Ragnarok after all, and I can just as easily have you removed. Loki's misguided attempt at intimidation did little to slow his enemy's advancement. As he continued to look at him, eyes full of hate, Loki, I may be grateful to you for allowing me to join Ragnarok. However, that's where my gratitude for you falls. I've been casting a blind eye to your crap for too long. You've crossed the line this time, and I won't be satisfied until you're lying face down on the ground whining like the little bitch you are. He stopped just 20 feet away from the church before stomping his foot hard onto the ground as declaration. Now get your ass down here. Or are you so weak and cowardly that you don't even have the balls to fight me man to man, assuming you are even a man? That last crack actually struck a nerve in the fourth fist. Contrary to popular belief, Loki, despite all his trickery, wasn't fond of being insulted or mocked. Despite how afraid he may have felt, being insulted by Fener wasn't something he was gonna take lying down. It also didn't help that he was the one who got the ninth fist in and was currently ruining not one but two of his very well-crafted plans. Add all that together, and even he decided to say screw it, I'm kicking his ass. Loki stood tall as he made his way to the ledge, number 20. The military girl straightened herself out as her boss called to her, yes, Loki? The fourth fist slowly regained his smile as he stopped at the edge of the ledge. Keep a firm grip on the brat, she's our insurance policy. I've got a rabid dog in desperate need of some house training. With that, Loki just leaned over the ledge, actually falling forward. Yet with impressive agility, the fourth fist flipping forward before wrapping his legs around the nearest pillar and actually using the momentum to swing around it like a tether ball before pushing off and landing on the ground and not far from Fener. With a crack of his neck and another chuckle, Loki loosened himself out before enter a stance with his hands in knife position. Hope you're ready for an ass-kicking, Fener. Time I show you who's in charge around here. The ninth fist merely snorted at the fourth fist's attempt to intimidate him, yet oddly enough didn't enter his Jenga stance, meriting a look of confusion from Loki. What's the matter, Fener? Too afraid to try out your little dance techniques on me? Fener growled at the insult but shook it off and merely prepared himself. No, Loki, I just don't feel like wasting my Capiria on someone as weak as you. Loki took the insult as one would expect and charged in hard. Without even blinking, he sent his knife hand out towards Fener, smirking as he moved. Fener may be a strong fighter, but he doesn't know a thing about how I fight or my special repeating knife strike. UGH. Loki let out a brief grunt of pain as Fener's right foot collided with his face, standing before Fener leapt up and shot both his legs out into Loki's ribs, sending him flying back towards the church. He made an impact with the wall and coughed up pretty violently before sliding down. Those present watched the display with different reactions. Kenichi's was one of awe, hermits of mild interest, while Sakaki and Akasame looked with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. Truth be told, it was obvious to both that while Loki was no amateur fighter by any means, the gap between him and Fener was still obviously vast. Thus it hardly seemed necessary to use such a powerful kick on his opponent, especially one so vicious. Fener, however, didn't seem to be done as he advanced towards the downed fist, determined to continue his onslaught. Loki, on the other hand, managed to straighten his back out and coughed up some blood before getting a good glance at Fener through his now cracked glasses. The fourth fist struggled to get up as his adversary continued his advance. You hold it right there. The ninth fist's eyes darted upwards towards the balcony of the church, while Loki smirked in response. Looks like the tables have turned in my favor at last. It was true, for his faithful follower number 20 currently had her knife right at Anoka's neck, while the frightened girl could only freeze in at the blade's cold touch. Her captor looked at the people below with a dark grin. If you lay one more finger on Loki, I swear I cut this midget's throat open. At the sight of the hostage in mortal danger, Fener froze in place while Kenichi started to enter into a mix of panic and anger. Loki all the while broke out into a long string of maniacal laughter as he got to his feet. Nicely done, number 20. As long as we have the girl, they won't lay a finger on us. Loki's attention turned to Fener, still frozen in place, as he wiped some of the blood off his lip from the last attack with a smirk of victory on his face. Well, Fener, looks like things are going my way now, doesn't it? Now, unless you want the girl to get hurt, I suggest you stand perfectly still and let me commence with your punishment for attacking me. Oddly enough, Fener didn't react as Loki envisioned, as he merely raised his eyes to meet with Loki's, only to find they were in a position that indicated the ninth fist was smiling at him through his mask. Just what the hell are you smiling about, Fener? With a mirthful chuckle, the ninth fist merely tilted his head, indicating he was pointing behind himself. Loki followed his direction and quickly took note of something he missed. Where the hell is Hermit? Kenichi, who'd fallen somewhat into the background, quickly turned his attention to his side only to find that his hooded adversary was missing. Where'd he go? A whooshing sound of a cape in the wind got the two fighters' attention to look up towards the balcony, and were met with a surprising sight. Fener, however, didn't even have to look to know what was happening and was secretly laughing inside. Guess he's not such a heartless bastard after all. Good to know. What he was referring to was Hermit, who at the sight of Anoka literally under the knife, he quickly reacted in a manner one wouldn't expect. That is, he charged in to save the girl who reminded him so much of the sister he'd failed to protect so long ago. Though he never truly admitted, Hermit had grown to enjoy the girl's company, and she managed to melt some of the barriers he'd placed around his heart. Thus he chose to put his hatred and distrust aside somewhat and rush to her rescue. With incredible left power, the sixth fist jumped to the balcony right in front of number 20 and the hostage Anoka. The military otaku girl couldn't even react fast enough as Hermit's hand shot out like a bullet, quickly wrapping itself around the hand the girl held her knife in. With quick movement, he pulled the arm and knife away from the girl's neck, and with a good amount of pressure forced her to drop the deadly weapon from her hand. He then finished off the job with a hard backhand to the girl's face, sending her into the wall and out cold. Anoka watched everything happen in the blink of an eye, and once it was over, looked upon her savior with awe and joy. Hermit, seeing the girl was safe, turned to Fenrir with an angry look on his face. Fenrir, kill Loki now. The ninth fist chuckled at the request, but instead shook his head before turning to Kenichi. The young disciple, seeing his sister out of danger, quickly took off like a rocket towards Loki, the one who'd put his sister in harm's way. With unbelievable speed and ferocity, he struck the distracted fist hard in the jaw with a solid karate punch. With a roar of fury, he put all his weight into the strike, sending Loki at the church wall, which due to its age and the previous collision gave out. Kenichi stood, his smoking fist extended, peering into the rubble as Loki struggled to get out. Kenichi looked ready to continue his onslaught of revenge, only to find a hand on his shoulder. He turned to find Fenrir behind him, shaking his head in disapproval. Don't waste your time on him, Kenichi, it isn't worth it. Besides. He jerked his thumb over his shoulder to Anoka, who was beside Hermit, having carried her down from the balcony ledge. She needs you more now than him. Kenichi felt somewhat awkward with one of his greatest enemies being so close in proximity to him. Then again, Hermit was the same thing, and he just saved his sister, so, for now, he let it slide. With a nod, he quickly ran towards his sister and embraced her in a hug, though flinched slightly from the pain of his injuries. Fenrir, on the other hand, took notice of Hermit, who'd made his way over to him. Neither made eye contact with each other, their faces respectively hidden, yet Fenrir couldn't help but smirk. That was a pretty cool thing you just did, saving the girl like that. Guess you do have a heart after all. Hermit just grunted in response, not willing to show any real emotion. Don't get all mushy on me, Fenrir. I just didn't like the idea of seeing the brat get hurt. She'd be proud of you, you know. Hermit's face shot up to look at Fenrir, who merely kept his back to the sixth fist, knowing he wouldn't try to hit him this time. The blonde was too distracted, thinking back to his sister smiling at him, and then looking at Anoka with a similar smile towards Kenichi before looking over at him and giving him the same look. The sight actually managed to bring a small smile to his normally stone-cold face as well. He slowly looked towards the now clear skies as the sun shined through, its light actually covering him. Hermit actually felt something inside of himself, as if the light from the sun had managed to illuminate some of the darkness in his soul. It was a warm feeling that actually felt pretty nice. Well, this is certainly an interesting development. Everyone present suddenly felt themselves pulled out of their respective thoughts as their eyes darted towards the source of the voice. Fenrir, Hermit, and Loki, however, recognized the voice instantly, merited hard looks from the two hooded fighters and a look of fear from Loki. He's here! All three spoke collectively. Kenichi, however, looked on in confusion as his attention turned towards the source of the voice. His gaze quickly caught the image of a young man about his age with short purple hair and blue eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses. The individual was strangely well dressed in a white business suit and pants with white dress shoes, and a yellow handkerchief in his left pocket. However, what Kenichi noticed were the gloves on the boy's hands. They were pure black gloves with a golden circle on the top of the hands, a snake's head biting the other end as the top, and in the middle was a golden Roman numeral. It was like the ones Fener and Hermit wore, except this one had the symbol for one on it. It didn't take long for him to put the pieces together, and sweat to start building in his body. Fener, however, looked on in anger at the approaching individual, having not expected his untimely arrival. The first fist Odin. Just what the hell is he doing here?